right, everybody, I think we're ready. Hold on, let me turn the video stream on. And okay, you're on. There you go, man.
It's on?
Yeah, it's on.
Looking good. That's how I roll.
All right, everybody, your Ben Joravsky show for Tuesday, July 30th is moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and helping bring back our program. First up, it's the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers. That number's Local 150. A shout out to those unions for jumping on board and helping bring back our program. And of course, today's show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. It is Tuesday, July 30th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, author and photographer Danielle DeGrasse Alston will join us. Our favorite grassroots organizer, Amisha Patel, with mystery guest returns. And activist Galen Alcarez. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Martini Man Tuesday. And here's why. Great week. You have a good weekend, D?
Yeah. Fantastic weekend.
Great weekend, man. Let me tell you what I did. I saw Quentin Tarantino's movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, 452
Tuesday, right?
times. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm just so excited about the weekend. So did I tell you what I did this weekend?
Go ahead.
I saw Quentin Tarantino's movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, 452 times. Okay?
Wow.
No, just saw it twice. But anyway, really loved it. Can't stop talking about it. But I'm going to really try to not talk about it. Although I will tell you this. On Wednesday, we're going to have 3 Tarantino geeks in the studio. Filmmaker Chris Adams, filmmaker Chris Buddy, and Sergio Mims will be here from Black Harvest Film Festival, and we'll be doing a total Tarantino geek out as a bonus. How about that?
I'll be sitting there just going, good Lord, look at these geeks.
Anyway, so that's what I did this weekend. What else did I do this weekend? All right, before I tell you what else I did this weekend, which I probably won't tell you at all, let me go back in time. That's the time machine. To about 5 days ago, I was standing in the hallway outside the men's room in the Chicago Sun-Times, because that's where all the action happens.
Where's this story going?
Not in the men's room, but outside the men's room. And who did I bump into, D? Mark Brown. That's who I bumped into, the legendary political writer for the Chicago Sun-Times. And he tells me, Ben, I got a really great story I'm working on that I think you're going to like. At which I said, tell me about it, man. What's the story? He goes, I am not going to tell you. I go, come on, man. Nope. That would be a scoop. Don't want to give away my scoop. So he made me sit, D. How about that, huh? He's old school. He wouldn't give away his story. Because he said to me, you know what he told me, D? He said, if I tell you what story I'm working on, I'm going to have to kill you.
Oh, God.
He actually did not tell me. That's a line from the Quentin Tarantino movie. Anyway, 5 days came, 5 days went, and on, I think it was Monday, bam, on my front porch arrived the following newspaper, my beloved bright one. There it is, home delivered every day. And the headline on the front page, Cashing Out. And this is the Mark Brown story that he had been telling me about. He'd been alluding to in the hallway outside the men's room. Cashing Out. 1998 state law was supposed to limit what politicians would give themselves from their campaign funds, usually when they retire. But the measure included 2 loopholes. Yes, indeed. Mark Brown did the deep dive, folks, and there's a loophole in the law that enables, follow me on this, politicians to keep the money that they got in campaign contributions if they received it before 1998, all right? So now you're thinking, why would they have any money in campaign contributions if they needed the contributions to run their campaigns? Excellent question. And the answer is, guess what? They didn't really need the money to run their campaigns because, 1, they're all powerful Democrats in a city that's dominated by Democrats, or 2, all powerful Republicans in suburban districts dominated by Republicans and nobody has a chance to beat them, or 3, they took in more money than they could possibly spend. It's a whole group of them, man. They took in way more money than they could possibly spend, shaking down campaign donors from Rockford to Carbondale, from one end of the state to the other. And then they are able to keep the money if they collected before 1998. Now, you're saying, why did they put that loophole in the law? And it's because they wouldn't have voted for the law if they didn't have that loophole. In other words, in the old days, they could keep all the money, could just shake down donors and then just declare it on their taxes and its income. So in the 1998, they said, all right, we're going to quote unquote reform the election law and force them to not keep as personal income campaign contributions, but 1998 is the grandfather date. And so in Mark Brown's article, Keeping the Change, he tallies up the total, which politician collected the most money, kept the most money, and the winner is former state rep Ralph Caparelli, a Democrat from Chicago, who walked away with $583,000.
Oh, I know that guy. No, I've never heard of him.
Okay. $583,350. By the way, his district was out by that old radio station we used to work for. I just can't remember the name of it. $583,357 between 2006 and 2010, more than anyone else had pocketed in this legalized money grab. That's Mark Brown writing. That's pretty good. Legalized money grab. Here's what Caparelli had to say, quote, "What else was I going to do with the money? Keep running?" Caparelli said when asked why he took the money. "Maybe," I suggested, "he could have donated to charity." Caparelli laughed, quote, "I'm the charity," said the retired lawmaker, who called on his way home from his health club and who at age 95 credits his long. And he said, "I didn't get as much as the other ones got." Well, Mark Brown points out that, yes, in fact, you did. That no one else has reported taking nearly as much as he has. Caparelli seemed surprised, and he said, "That's pretty good. I didn't know." What a guy, the Martini Man, Ralph Caparelli, shook down his donors for campaign contributions that he didn't need because he had hardly any kind of opposition and collected the money. And he does this, by the way, D, on top of a very generous pension that we, the taxpayers of the state of Illinois, offer up for all the retired legislators who meet that, who get that pension benefit. And let me just say this. I'm a big supporter of pensions. I'm supportive of pensions for people who really deserve them, like retired firefighters and police officers and teachers and nurses and drivers, et cetera, and so forth. People pave the roads, people collect the tolls, all that good stuff. But come on, Caparelli. I know you're loving that martini, but you're giving pensions a bad name for all the people who deserve them. We got a great show today, everybody. Danielle DeGrasse Alston will be here. She's the author of this book, We Are the Kids in Africa. She'll be here talking about that book. Amisha Patel, our favorite grassroots organizer, will be in, and she'll be bringing a mystery guest, D. She'll be talking about all the issues of the day in the city of Chicago, including the plan for more to raise money to fight homelessness in the city, and also doing a lot of political talk. I know I'm going to be asking her about the upcoming debate tonight. Don't forget, tonight's the big round one of the debate. And then at 2:30, Gaylan Alcarez, community activist from the south side of Chicago. She says she wants to talk about local political issues and crime issues, some really serious murders, sad murders that took place this weekend in the city of Chicago. We'll be talking about all that. And, toward the end of the show, we'll get into some debate prep with Gaylan as well. We'll be talking about tonight's big Democratic debate. So a lot of local, state, and national political talk ahead of us. But before we do any of that, the doctor with the news.
Hey, guys, how's it going? I'm Dennis, not a doctor. Hey, did you say Amisha Patel has a mystery guest?
Yes, indeed, a mystery guest.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Who could it be? Oh, my God.
Yeah, man, do not know.
And you have a mystery guest.
Yes, I do. Should we let the mystery guest announce herself?
I'm throwing it to you, buddy.
All right, Paul, mystery guest, introduce thyself.
How's it going, listeners? I'm Rachel Joravsky, Ben's daughter. Dad, you have a fully functioning soundboard, and you're still out here making your own sound effects. Like, I'm shook and confused.
You mean like this one? Or how about this one?
That was ghost sound effect? I'm not really.
That's the mystery guest sound effect. And here's the sound effect when somebody's coming to the studio and really in a hurry and they're driving. got a lot of sound
Now,
effects.
Dennis, I guess you don't need that.
It's an easy job for me. I just sit back and let him go. I just sit back and let him go.
Yes, Rachel's in town. She's usually in New York City, but you're in town for a month doing a project. So I said, come on in, right?
I am. It's good to be here. Gotta do some daddy-daughter collabing. The fans have been waiting for it, right?
Yes, indeed. Since you've been in town, we've kind of been roommates together. Rachel made me breakfast. Rachel made me dinner. She went and saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with me, which was really nice. Or did you enjoy the movie?
I did enjoy the movie. When I first, I needed a quick little talk back moment to really flesh out my feelings on it. When I first got out of it, I was like, well, what was that story? I got to think on it more. But by the end of it, I was into it. I was feeling it.
Wait, what's a talkback moment?
Like a talk back, you know what I mean? Where you discuss the themes, what happened in it, the key characters.
But talking with other people or talking to yourself?
With other people. I mean, we were having the talk back.
Yeah, we were having the talk back.
We were all having the talk back.
I was just I thought you were in your mind, you were going, yeah, what do you think about that movie? Leah, did you see the movie?
No, I didn't, but I saw The Farewell this weekend with Awkwafina, which was great. I highly recommend it.
All right, I'm going to go see Awkwafina. Maybe Rachel will come with me. I'm going to see Awkwafina this weekend and or maybe this week, maybe tomorrow. But you were definitely going to go see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Correct?
Yeah, I'll see it before this weekend.
All right, very good. All right, Dr. D.
All right, I don't watch movies. Okay, before we find out what's happening nationally this afternoon, we have to talk about the news from the weekend and Monday. I really don't watch that many movies, but just days after he presided over a hearing investigating the Trump administration's handling of migrants and detention centers at the U.S.-Mexico border. I'm sure all of you listening have heard about this by now. Maryland Representative Elijah Cummings was thrown under the bus via Twitter by the president. It all started on Saturday when Donald Trump tweeted, as proven last week during a congressional tour, the border is clean, efficient, and well run, just very crowded. Cummings' district is a disgusting, rat and rodent-infested mess. If he spent more time in Baltimore, maybe he could help clean up this very dangerous and filthy place. Didn't take long for the media to explode after that. Ben, before we get into today's updates, share with us your initial thoughts on Trump's tweet this Tuesday afternoon.
Well, it's more insanity from the President of the United States, and it's his attempt to, he's tripling down on his campaign strategy to just make black people the face of the Democratic Party on the grounds that he assumes that most Americans will just have a knee-jerk instinctive reaction to vote against a black person if he's running against Donald Trump. I think that's clearly the strategy. That's why he keeps denigrating any black official, any black elected official, pretty much any black elected official who dares to disagree with him. He went after Sharpton. I don't know if you're going to talk about that in your update as well. So he's moving beyond elected officials. I think it's part of a clear strategy on Trump's part. Plus, the guy's insane. Let's face it, D. In this particular case with Elijah Cummings, Cummings has been critical of Donald Trump on many fronts, including our immigration policy of locking up detainees at the border. But it was just after Trump saw a documentary or a Fox TV news segment on Baltimore that it seemed to trigger. So he's triggered his tweets. So he gets his news and his information from Fox, and they're sort of joined in the head, if you will, on their worldview. And I think this is part of a strategy. And I said it last week. I do not believe America will follow Donald Trump down this path. I'm choosing to be optimistic. I think that Americans are better than the President of the United States, and I do not believe they will endorse his extreme hate-filled tweeting and obsessiveness about black people in this country.
So that was on Saturday. Now on to today, Tuesday. Trump has since said that his Baltimore tweet is helping himself. He gave a speech today in Jamestown, Virginia, but before taking off, he spoke with journalists, and Trump said, well, quite a bit. We'll start with this quote here. Cue the vacuum.
I am the least racist person there is anywhere in the world.
More can you possibly?
Said it, right?
Yeah, he said it. Once again, with the what is the helicopter in the background? One of his favorites.
Air Force One.
Oh, it's Air Force One. He stands right next to the airplane with the engines roaring, so he can't hear questions. He can only make asinine statements.
I am the least racist person there is anywhere in the world.
I mean, if he said it, right?
Anywhere in the world, it's a big world. That's a heck of a statement.
And his source was a Fox and Friends documentary on so that was his source for his comments. Just I want to make sure I'm getting that straight.
Yeah, it was a segment. I don't know. I can't remember which Fox segment it was, but it triggered him. And this is a pattern with Trump. He'll see something on TV, generally Fox, and it'll trigger a response.
Yeah.
And he has an instinctive reaction the way many people who are listening to the show would have a reaction. So it was a segment that was particularly critical, denigrating Baltimore. And so he then just tweeted out. And I'm sure he didn't even give it any thought. He just tweeted it out.
Yeah.
And
personally, I think I'd rather swallow a bag of sand than watch a Fox and Friends documentary covering Baltimore. But,
it's probably more informative if you swallow the sand.
Trump then said, quote, "The African-American people have been calling the White House. They have never been so happy as what a president has done." So, yes, the White House still has a landline. That's very interesting. Hello, White House. Can I help you? How can I forward your call?
He said the African-American people, just the African-American people everywhere calling the White House. That is so bizarre. I mean, I don't even know where to go with that.
Then he called Reverend Al Sharpton, who stuck up for Elijah Cummings a few days back. Yeah, he called him a racist.
Con men who I've known almost all my business life, because I had to deal with him, unfortunately, in New York. But I got along with him, Al Sharpton. Now, he's a racist. He's a racist.
Wait, okay, once again, I had to deal with him, unfortunately, but I got along with him. So what is it? You got along with him? Or it was unfortunate?
And he's a racist.
And he's a racist. And a con man. Like, Donald Trump calling anyone a con man. Does anybody remember Donald Trump's steaks? And how about Donald Trump's university, where people paid but didn't get much out of it? So how about the contractors didn't get paid, but for even though they worked on Donald Trump's projects? How about the taxpayers of the city of Chicago and Cook County who are still paying off for Trump Towers because they got the tax break on that tower here in the city? So it's interesting that Donald Trump. What does Monroe always say, D? He's projecting.
He is.
He's projecting. So he's a con man. He calls Al Sharpton a con man.
So to recap, Al Sharpton, racist. Donald Trump.
I am the least racist person there is anywhere in the world.
So
Anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Good God.
He's also like, I don't know if you guys been defending or following his like defensive ASAP Rocky in Sweden, but like he's totally using, helping out this black rapper as like a front for his own racism. And it's like, this is proof that he's like down with the black community, that he's helping Rocky.
Yeah, that story broke to Franz Smart and Sergio Mendez were in the studio. Remember that day? I had never heard of ASAP Rocky, and Sergio went into a long explanation, very learned explanation about ASAP Rocky and the pros and cons of him, which I did not know until he...
I'm a big fan, if I'm being honest. ASAP Mob? Oh, I love some East Coast hip hop.
Wait, you're a big fan of ASAP or Sergio?
I like them both, but Rocky.
Yeah.
Rocky. Yeah, he's fire.
Can you do any Rocky lines right now? Go.
It's like there's that rains, it pours, dun, 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 dun. That one song with Skepta. Does anyone here follow hip hop?
Nope.
The rains and pours is good enough.
I praise the Lord, then drink some more. It rains, it pours. I know everyone wants me to do this for another 30 minutes, but
well, maybe when Danielle comes, you guys can do some A$AP Rocky. Anyway, yeah. So Donald Trump has these random quote unquote African American friends who are really supportive of him. And they're calling the White House, so really good for them.
Fantastic A$AP Rocky
Thank you.
there. Isn't that right, Robert Mueller?
That's correct.
Very correct. That's correct. All right, now let's try to transition this into tonight's 2020 Democratic presidential candidate debate. All right, Ben, our 2020 presidential candidates have weighed in on Trump's tweet.
Okay.
All right, Senator Elizabeth Warren called Trump's tweet, ugly and racist. Mm-hmm. Senator Kamala Harris called his attack disgraceful. Mr. $27 himself, Senator Bernie Sanders, called Trump, quote, a racist president. And former Vice President Joe Biden called the rant despicable.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And here's a different twist here. Candidate Andrew Yang. Yes, listeners, he's a candidate. You may remember him during the last debates. He was the one with the not-so-sound debate strategy of chilling out, not saying much, and putting his hands in his pockets.
Yeah, no, definitely take your hands out of your pocket. Is he going to be in any of the debates? Did he make the next round? Okay.
Yeah, he's going to be in. He's going to be in the debates here.
Andrew Yang, take your hands out of your pockets.
So he weighed in on Trump's tweets. Let's hear what he has to say here. And Ben, tell us what you think.
So when the president says rat and rodent infested, what do you think? I mean, is that just blatant racism? Why?
Well, we have to stop running around after Trump's tweets. One of the things I'm saying is that, look, if he verifies that he's Donald Trump for the 1,000th time, that's not really like a game changer for us. It's like he is who he is. We have to actually try and solve the problems on the ground that got him elected. That's the focus of my campaign, and that's where, in my opinion, the entire field should be focused.
Yeah, this is a debate. There's a great column in today's Tribune I urge everybody to read after today's show.
There you go.
And gets into some of these issues. Heidi Stevens, divided if we do, divided if we don't. Should we keep engaging over Trump's tweets? And she wrote a very good column. I urge everybody to read, as I said. I think, let's put it this way. If he was Donald John Trump, host of The Apprentice, we could ignore it. But he's Donald John Trump, president of the United States. So I must disagree with Yang. I don't think you can ignore such blatant attempts to stir up racial animosity, such blatant attempts to pit black against white. I don't think you can ignore that when it's coming from the president of the United States. So I understand what Andrew Yang's larger point is, that there's a distraction from the issues of the day. But let's face it, it's very compelling because it's so sensational, it's scary, and ugly at the same time. So I think you have to address it on some level or another. I don't think you can ignore it when it's coming from the president of the United States.
Well, so maybe just keep those hands in your pockets and chill out again, maybe on the second debate.
Yeah, no, Andrew, come forth. What do you think? You should ignore it?
I mean, I think that there's also the truth that so much of what Trump says as president are directly tied to the issues of the day, and they inform them literally, especially when we're talking about issues he has, being tied to white supremacy. And then we see these crazy quote unquote lone wolves, shooting folks down here and there. And I think it's just like he's causing a lot of malice in this country by what he says. So how are we just supposed to be rolling our eyes when what he says has real effects?
Leah, what do you think?
I agree with that for sure, but I also see Andrew Yang's point in that no matter what Trump says, his base is going to keep supporting him. He could say pretty much anything, and I guess of course you should call it out and call it out for racism when you see it, but it's also like no matter what you say, you could say that's racist. I don't think they're going to care.
No, I don't think you speak out because you're hoping to change a Donald Trump supporter's mind. You're absolutely correct. I don't think you can. But I think Maya put it best when she was in the studio last week. Donald Trump is normalizing bigotry and normalizing racist attacks. And I don't think we should tolerate that. So that's where I disagree with you.
He's setting a tone. He's setting a tone for the nation, and he's radicalizing white male brains. You know what I mean? I mean, that's how I see it. So maybe that, I don't agree with you.
I think that it's incumbent upon the Democrats to speak out against it and show that that's not what they tolerate and believe. It's a distraction, but in some ways it's the most compelling issue we have, the behavior of the man who's running our country. So in some ways, I think that's what this election will all be about. I've been saying that for a long time.
Andrew Yang will be featured in the second round of this week's Democratic debates, but he will be on night 2, Wednesday night, all right? And hey, since we're already on the subject, let's talk about tonight, night 1 of the Democratic debates. Yes, 10 of our 20 candidates are ready to talk about the issues or Donald Trump's tweet this evening. Ben, I have the roster here. I'll read who's up tonight and weigh in and tell us what you think the candidates need to do tonight to get over in the polls. All right, here we go. First up, you have her button. Marianne Williamson.
Oh my God, you have her button? Oh, wow. Wait, can I see that?
Yeah, sure. Marianne Williamson in the studio. Who gave me the button was the political love couple. Kitty Kurth and Kevin Lampe were in here for a bonus special. You can download it, but not now because you'll listen to our show.
This is like a Madonna album cover.
Yeah, it does. It's got kind of that Madonna vibe. Marianne Williamson, I don't think there's any possibility, as much as I appreciate some of the things she says, I don't think there's any possibility that Marianne Williamson will be one of, let's say, the top 10 candidates coming out of this primary. So I'm not quite sure what she can do to enhance her campaign if the goal is to win. But if the goal is to say sensible things that get people to view our problems in a different way, and maybe just raise the notion of advocating for peace and harmony, that I think there's things she could do to just like kind of promote like a general good vibe, if you follow what I'm saying. And she'll be made fun of. No matter what she says, she'll be made fun of in the aftermath. Not by me, because I believe in promoting a good vibe. But I think that's pretty much the best that Marianne Williamson can do tonight.
All right, so Marianne Williamson, the first. Next up, I had to ask Ben to remind me of his first name. Shows you where he stands in my book here.
Yeah.
John Delaney.
Nothing he can do. I don't know. You know, he is the former congressman from Maryland. Am I correct about that? Yeah, I'm not even sure he's putting out. Hey, put out a good vibe, all right, dude. You could put out a good vibe.
Up next, John Hickenlooper.
Just see. For 10 trivia points, what governor of ours used to refer to Hickenlooper?
Governor Rauner.
Ding, ding, ding. You are correct. Yeah.
All right. Up next, also, I had to ask Ben of his first name. Pick it up, buddy. Tim Ryan.
Tim Ryan, man. He's the congressman from Ohio. By the way, no notes. Okay, no notes. He's the congressman from Ohio who took a stand against Nancy Pelosi. That is ancient history. He's one of the quote-unquote conservative Democrats who sort of rallied against Nancy Pelosi before Ocasio-Cortez made it fashionable, even though she never really made it fashionable. So I don't know what he can do. I don't know why he's on the stage. You got any advice for him?
You know who I miss is, what was his name? Eric Swalwell, the one with the kind of thick neck?
Yeah.
Who was like, all I do is change diapers and legislate, was like what he said in the last debate. I liked him.
Yeah, well, I had some issues with
Ben
him.
hated him.
The generational thing. He was the one to go, hey, Grandpa Joe, you're old. Pass the torch. That was his other thing.
I like that he was changing diapers. I love a progressive male who's not afraid to get his hands dirty, you know?
I changed a few diapers in my time, little lady. Okay.
Up next,
All right.
Steve Bullock.
Oh, Bullock's in this debate from Montana?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah, you know what? Okay, so he's going to establish himself as sort of like the conservative mainstream centrist who can appeal to Trump voters. So there's a lot of Democrats out there. They want to vote for the person they think can beat Trump. I think that would probably a majority of voters actually in this primary that would motivate them. So it's a long shot, to put it mildly, but that's what he's going to be attempting to do tonight.
All right, let's do a little one-word association. We're coming.
Oh, my
we're
God.
running on
One
time
word?
here.
That's
Yeah, I know,
hard.
buddy. Feet to the fire here. Amy Klobuchar.
That's the first word that popped into my mind. Mean.
Mean. Okay.
Wow.
Oh, wow. All right. Beto O'Rourke.
Phony.
Next.
Oh, he could have a million words for this one. Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Double phony. And
Next.
that guy just discovered that we have troubling race relations. He just discovered that, D.
I tried, and I couldn't get it done.
Wow, is that your Pete Buttigieg imitation?
If you could call it an imitation.
Pretty good. Mueller, what do you think?
That's correct.
Oh, pretty good. Is this good?
That's the most validating experience I've ever been a part of.
All right, and then our final two. Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders.
Like her, like him. Like them both.
Mommy and Zaddy, okay?
Yeah, there's a lot of mommy daddy going there. They're going to be now. This is a pivotal moment for them because they're sort of battling for the same base and the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. So their job tonight, their challenge is to try to, in a nice way, I suppose, advance their campaign as opposed to the others. And Leah, tomorrow we're going to really turning to you because you're an Elizabeth Warren fan.
I do like Elizabeth Warren a lot. Yeah, I'm excited to see her and Bernie face off tonight because they align on a lot of things. Their views align. So I don't know I feel like it's just going to be them agreeing with each other tonight.
Or trying to look for differences that would give somebody a reason to vote for one or the other. You're an Elizabeth Warren fan.
You know,
as well.
I love Elizabeth Warren. She reminds me of someone I'd run into in the sauna of a JCC. And she's just like, there's something really reassuring about her. You know, you might have been in like a low impact Pilates class with her. Like, I'm Warren all the way.
Yeah. So, but you were a Bernie supporter back in the day.
Yes, I was. And my sister, your other daughter, not to put her on blast is a Bernie supporter. He reminds me of someone that might be at a Passover dinner that I would be partaking in. But I like Warren. I mean, what can you say? Like, when you're basically spewing the same rhetoric, it's going to come down to like these little like personality distinctions. And right now, Warren's ringing more of a bell for me.
Dennis, what about you?
What was the question?
The question is,
Sitting looking at the time.
if you had to choose right now, and your choices were Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders.
Oh, Bernie.
I didn't even get the
Bernie.
All right.
Without a doubt.
He loves Bernie Sanders.
Talking about healthcare, man. Now, of course, we'll keep you posted on these stories as today's program rolls along, and I'm sure we'll be talking about tonight's debate plenty on today's show. But we're moving on. We're going to talk about what's going on locally. We're going to find out what else is news. And today, we're going to talk about two things, all right, for the local segment. Gambling.
Ooh.
Oh, let me get the sound effect. Oh, yeah. Gambling. And this guy. Wait, don't have my sound effect. Hold on, let me get this one again. And we edit it out because it's, and then we can do it pre-recorded. It's JB Pritzker.
Oh, come on. I am not a perfect person.
There we go.
I'm not a perfect person.
That guy. Illinois Governor JB Pritzker. The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times and the one and only Tina Sfondeles.
Ooh.
The article is titled, Pritzker Finally Shows His Hand.
Yeah.
Get it? Gambling pun? Good stuff.
Oh, man, my bright one.
Filling empty chairs on Illinois Gaming Board. Pritzker finally has a new Illinois Gaming Board chair and a complete 5-person board to oversee the largest gambling expansion bill the state has ever seen. Pritzker on Monday named Charles, I'm sure I'm going to butcher this one,
Schmadecki, man.
to serve as chair. Schmadecki is a partner in charge of Hinshaw and Culbertson LLP's Springfield office. It's the same firm that Illinois House Speaker Mike Madigan has paid $297,345 in legal fees so far this year. Schmadecki previously served as general counsel to the state controller and spent 17 years working for the Illinois Attorney General as chief of the General Law Bureau. Schmadecki worked in the Attorney General's office from August 1982 until May 1999 under Republican Tyrone Fauner. Democrats Neil Hartigan and Roland Burris and Republican Jim Ryan, the governor's office said. Ben Joravsky, your thoughts?
All right. Well, we've been talking a lot about the gambling bill that passed about a month or so ago. I urge everyone to check out our Jason Grotto interview. It's a bonus interview. Don't listen to it now, but listen to it later because Jason takes a deep dive in this one. And the reality is, folks, as I like to say, is that the state of Illinois has to figure out ways to raise money to pay its bills, its many obligations. So we're turning to gambling. We're expanding gambling in the state of Illinois. We're turning Illinois into another Nevada or another Vegas. There's going to be gambling, and so it was rushed through without any oversight. How could there possibly be oversight? There wasn't enough time. It was over 800 pages, the law itself. So folks don't know it's in there. There's a massive battle between various gambling interests, each one trying to outdo the other, outmaneuver the other, hiring lobbyists, et cetera, and so forth, so that they would have the upper hand with whatever eventually was passed. So that was our legislation that was passed about a month or so ago. And now here we are in July, and Pritzker has to fill out the gaming board, which is an appointed board statewide that will determine where, among other things, the casino in Chicago goes. So you figure that they would have already figured out who would be on the board when they passed the bill, but obviously this stuff is being done really in a rush because we're desperate for the money. And I've got to tell you, folks, this is what Jason Grotto pointed out. We will probably not raise nearly as much money as we want to from the gambling expansion, and we will also be taxing people who can least afford to pay it because gambling is a very regressive occupation. It soaks the people who can least afford to lose the money that they're losing. And let's face it, you're going to lose when you go to a casino because it's all set up against you. So that said, if in a perfect world, we would not be expanding gambling to pay our basic bills, but the world is far from perfect, as we know. This particular job, as Tina Sfondeles points out, Dee, is, as she says, it's a tough job, including long hours grappling with a daunting gaming expansion that will see the chronically understaffed board's workload skyrocket in the months ahead. All that for just $300 per diem for attending 2 meetings a month. It sounds horrible. Okay, but old boy took the job, Charles Schmadecki. All right, and so years from now he'll talk about, maybe he'll write a book about my days on the board. But so they're going to figure out where the casinos are going to go, and I can tell you what, D, I just have this troubling feeling that this whole gaming thing is just not going to work out like anybody wants it to work out.
Schmadecki was general counsel to State Controller Dan Hines until January of 2003 when he joined Hinshaw and Culberson. Hines is one of Pritzker's deputy governors. Anthony Garcia, who previously served as senior counsel for litigation and investigations for the Boeing Company, will serve on the gaming board, according to the governor's office. He previously spent 7 years at the U.S. Department of Justice. Pritzker on June 28th signed the gambling bill, part of a $45 billion capital plan.
Yeah, and by the way, these are certain types of people that get appointed to these boards, corporate lawyers, insiders. They've worked throughout government. The Schmadecki has worked for Republicans and Democrats. Dee, nobody like you or me, or Rachel, nobody like you would ever be appointed to any board. I don't know, they maybe put you on as an actress, a comedian on like an arts board or something like that. But nobody is on the board who, like, let's say, has a great concern about the impact gambling has on poor people, if you follow what I'm saying. It's all about, structuring the deal so the deal can be cut.
Yeah, or like addiction. Like, are they putting any like doctors on the board? I feel like doctors who deal with like, I don't know, what the brain looks like on addiction or whatever.
The last people they want are anybody in that board that would try to deter the state from expanding gambling. They want to expand gambling because
we got to make that money.
Yeah, got to make the money. Got to make the money. So they're not going to put anybody. Yeah, like somebody on the board saying, maybe that's not a good idea to have another casino here because we're already the people are throwing their money out already, and they'd be like, "Shut up, guy!"
Like, no, money.
Money.
We want your money.
We want
medical
the money.
No money. So there
money.
you are. Just like that, you're now in the know of what's going on locally, and now you'll have an answer the next time someone asks you, "Hey, what else is news?"
All right, Dr. D, I'm going to tell you something that J.B. Pritzker, something that Charles Schmadecki, and something that Rachel all agree on. Awesome. You did a great job. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. We'll be right back after this.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan. Hey there, producer Dennis here. Thanks for finding and listening to the brand new Ben Joravsky Show. All right, so here's how this works. The Ben Joravsky Show live streams on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Once the show is over, you can listen to the replay on our YouTube channel, or we throw it online for you to download by 4 p.m. Where can you download the Ben Joravsky Show, you may be asking yourself? Well, you may be asking yourself a fantastic question. You can find previous Ben Joravsky shows and guest interviews through several outlets. The Chicago Sun-Times online, chicago.suntimes.com, the Chicago Reader online, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, pick one. Just search for The Ben Joravsky Show. J-O-R-A, V as in victory, S-K-Y. So, let's recap. Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Live streamed on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel and downloadable by 4 at chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcast. Yes, the Ben Joravsky Show is back. We're live and downloaded. Tell your friends and enjoy the rest of the show. Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Discover the breadth and majesty of Chicago's architecture on a Chicago Architecture Center bus tour. From bungalows to Bauhaus, our expert docents will share the fascinating stories behind our city's architecture. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a bus tour right now. Oh my, look at that wonderful piece of architecture. Get a special discount for Illinois residents from July 15th to August 15th. All Illinois residents get 50% off select walking tours. Visit architecture.org/IL-resident.
First call is to Prime Minister of New Zealand, who said that her goal is to make New Zealand the place where it's the best place in the world for a child to grow up. And I will tell her girlfriend you are so on, because the United States of America is going to be the best place in the world for a child to grow up.
Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yes, indeed. Our next guest, I've known her for a long, long time, since the 1990s, when she was sort of like a very young girl. And so, Rachel, I'll allow you to introduce our next guest.
Oh my God, yes. This is my sister from another Mr. and honestly, Mrs. We have no blood that is the same in our veins. She's so talented. I love her so much. We went to high school and grammar school together. My longtime bestie, Danielle DeGrasse Alston.
All right,
Hello.
Danielle. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. I've known Danielle forever. And this weekend, I went to a book signing party for Danielle. I said, you have to come on the show and tell everybody about what you did. The name of the book is We Are the Kids in Africa, Diary of an American Girl, and that's Danielle. Well, everybody looking on the TV. Danielle, that's Danielle. It's a self-portrait, I presume, right?
Yeah, that's the self-portrait. And just to not be confused, I'm the black girl, not the white donkey.
Well, thank God you helped us out on that one. So Danielle, before we talk about what you did in this book, We Are the Kids in Africa, talk a little bit about how you got involved in photography and your career as a photographer so far.
I got involved right here in Chicago, actually. It's kind of started in high school. A lot of my friends were musicians. And I borrowed / stole a camera from a really good friend who didn't want it back. Ended up using it to shoot my musician friends. They started doing well. I started doing well. And it kind of was just this organic mesh. I've been doing photography ever since, directing music videos, corporate stuff, creative stuff. It's fully in my blood now.
Who are some of the artists whose videos you filmed?
I shot some of the very first videos of Vic Mensa, Chance the Rapper, Kami, pretty much the entire Save Money crew, Joey Perp. I mean, we all went to school together. Like, we literally carpooled to school together. Like, I would pick them up from school and charge them $5 a week, which was so important to me at the time.
And so this book, what you did in this book is sort of it's a different venture completely than shooting videos for rap stars and singers. Talk about what you did in this book, We Are the Kids in Africa.
So We Are the Kids, you're right, it's completely different from what I traditionally do, which is music video or like musician photography. I guess it's a very personal project. I've always kind of had this like philanthropic side. In high school, I had this party called the White Party, which contrary to the title was actually to donate money for kids in Africa. So I think I've always just been kind of like drawn to Africa. Obviously, as a lot of, African Americans are. They're very curious about the homeland. So I took a trip there without the intention of creating this photo book, but I took the trip there really to just kind of explore and, teach a bit of our Western ways to some of the youth over there. And took a bunch of pictures, was actually kind of scared to take pictures just because I felt really uncomfortable and unfamiliar there. It wasn't like these were my friends or, musicians and stuff like that, which are usually situations conducive for photos. It was more intimate. I was taking photos like in people's homes of their children, at school. And also there was a language barrier. So it was, a bit awkward. But it turned out beautiful. The photos were beautiful. The book also has a bit of text in it, my commentary on, my experiences because I went to South Africa. So there was this really big elephant in the room of apartheid, which made me feel really awkward because here in America, although we have our issues with race, we've pretty much accepted that everyone is allowed to have a voice. I wasn't really sure how far along South Africa had been. I mean, they're 24 years along since apartheid, so it was a bit awkward. But the book is really just commentary on photos of specifically kids, so youth there. And I think really I'm trying to parallel the fact that the youth in South Africa, amid our cultural and geographical differences, is very similar to the youth here in the United States.
So you were in South Africa. That's where was that the first time you'd been to Africa?
That was the first time I had been there. I went to Johannesburg, but the school that I was working with was about 8 hours north of Johannesburg, like proper in the bush.
In the bush. Talk about that. What does that mean in the bush?
So the bush is, we have rainforest, we have desert, we have, ocean. The bush is a mixture of forest and desert. So it's a desert, but there are trees, but the trees look dead. So it's a type of land, right? Or it's a type of landscape.
And so it's rural, I presume.
It's completely rural. A lot of the land is used for resorts to have safaris. So anytime you see a safari, that's the bush, that type of land. So a lot of the land over there is for these resorts, but there are villages that live there. And so a lot of the jobs that these people in the villages end up getting are either on the resorts or farming type jobs.
And so where did you stay when you were in the bush?
I stayed for a bit on a wildlife orphanage where they take animals who've been hurt or injured and they kind of help them get better, rehabilitate them, and then send them back out. But also at this orphanage, we invite students from the neighboring village to come by and help us take care of these animals. And then I got a chance to go to the village and stay there for a couple nights and really see the way that they live and visit the school and work with them a bit there.
As you said, you wrote some text here. I have the book in front of me, so I probably should have you read it. But since that would require passing it back and forth, I'll just read it. I won't imitate you when I read it.
No.
I don't know.
Don't do that imitation.
Don't do the imitation.
I don't even want to know what that would sound like.
I don't know. You want me to try it? No.
No. Your show. So, yeah.
If you want to imitate Danielle. All right. So I'll read it, and then you offer some commentary on it and what it's all about, okay? So it's a picture of, I think that's shakes.
Yeah, that's shakes.
And people can see shakes. And here's what you wrote. Shakes and I had a harmony that aligned our day. It was enough harmony to last us the whole week, actually. I look like such a tourist with my camera, and I look like your tour guide. Geography granted Africans a pride, the type that was founded on history and wealth. When I explored the city with shakes, I began to grow a familiar affection for it. Curiosity ushered us around Johannesburg and up to Soweto, Southwest Township, the only neighborhood in the world with two Nobel Peace Prize winners that once lived on the same block, one of whom was Nelson Mandela. Talk about what's going on there in that passage.
Yeah, so I think that's a good example because the book is really, it's a combination of like a personal diary, but also I think there was a lot of history that I learned on that trip. So it was important. Shakes let me explain him, was a friend that I met when I was over there. And I think he was really kind of this vehicle while I was there, because he was a proper African. And, you know, he was my muse also as a photographer. I was taking pictures of him, really, that I wanted to do for, you know, kind of fashion style. But it also turned into this really great relationship that we had with each other, where not only were we able to shoot together creatively, but we were also able to learn a lot about South Africa together and do kind of all of these touristy things. And he was able to show me. So I was able to see it from his eyes. And I think I sort of started to look at him as a piece of Africa. And then the more that we got closer, the more I felt like I was getting closer to Africa as a country. The more I learned about him and his story and where he's from and how he grew up there. And additionally, I mean, it's really important to realize how much history is in that city of Johannesburg. I mean, the entire Nelson Mandela revolution happened there, but there's a lot of museums that explain all of that, but there's a lot of pain there as well. And at the same time, there's a lot of growth, and it's beautiful, and it's something that I don't think we always acknowledge.
Two Nobel Prize winners on the same block. Wow, that's some block.
Yeah, and that's the only place in the world where that's happened. I think that's just like speaks volumes to the type of strength that can come out of a not so great neighborhood, because actually Southwest Township, Soweto, is a township. And if you guys are not familiar with townships, they were neighborhoods that during apartheid, blacks were forced to live in to separate them from whites. So, and these neighborhoods are huge. We're talking like 1 million people, and they literally have gates around them still to this day, like brick walls, where they were supposed to stay and work and live and go to school. And a lot of time, well, every single time, they were, you know, often slums. So it's just really interesting that you have these two Nobel Peace Prize winners who come from a forced slum, if that makes sense.
Yes, and then there's this picture, which are showing to the cameras, and the downloaders can't see this, but with this, the following, it's Danielle, and what is that, a donkey? Is that what you said?
That is a donkey.
Okay.
Yeah, his name was Eeyore.
Okay.
Ironically.
And then there's some fellow who I don't know who that is on the other side.
He was another volunteer at the school. So he was a teacher as well. He's from Madagascar.
Got it. All right. So here's what you wrote in this picture with you having fun with this. It looks like you're like in a bar with the donkey.
We're actually, that's at it's technically the bar of the school that we were at. They had like a little bar for the older people, you know.
And they let the donkey in the bar.
Well, it's outdoors. So
okay.
Everything was outdoors because it was so hot.
And the way the picture's set up, I mean, I'm going on and on about the picture. It was a great picture. It's like you just see the donkey's head.
Okay. Can I explain this picture a little bit? It's really weird. So in front of me, there's a table, and that's where we eat dinner every night, right? It's kind of a bar, but it's also where we eat dinner. And this donkey just roams around the camp all the time. He was one of the donkeys. He was one of the animals that they had taken in, rehabilitated, because he's actually 90% blind. But he just chose never to leave. So he just kind of hangs around the camp and loiters around. And even though he's blind, when you eat, he comes up and puts his head, you know, just kind of, you know, asking
Was he
for a little
nice?
food. He was really nice. I don't look petrified in that picture, but I was actually terrified. I think that's the closest I ever came to him.
Yeah. On the cover, it kind of looks like it's because you can't see the other guy and you can only see his hands. So it kind of looks like it's like a mascot head. And I was like, oh, is it a real?
Yeah, it does.
That is real.
Is it a real donkey?
Because you don't see the back of the donkey, you just see the head. So I'm like, is that just the head? It's like a Godfather thing.
Right, that's what I thought.
Yeah, same bad, really obscure joke. All right, here we go. I'm going to read the text, Danielle, and you tell us what it's all about. In America, I would classify a safe neighborhood as clean, probably majority white, and it helps if there's a Starbucks. The village was 0 for 3, not a Starbucks in sight. Everyone kept telling me to be cautious, especially at night. But eventually I grew tired of eating dinners alone and scrolling on my phone until crashing at around 8 p.m. Jet lag was no longer an excuse. I needed to socialize, something I suspected every country had in common. Talk about that.
Yeah, this is really important too, because when I was doing research before I went to South Africa, a lot of the TripAdvisor or just any sort of website that would give you advice on the country was really discouraging. Just like, go here, but only go during the day. It talked a lot about, how dangerous it was. And, even when I spoke to friends who had been there before, even a friend who had grew up there, lived there, was telling me it's really dangerous. I don't think you should go. Like, to that extent. So I was terrified when I first got there the first night, to the point where I really didn't feel like going out. I wanted to do the traditional touristy things and then go home. And then as I said in the passage, eventually I got bored of that and I was willing to go out. And being from Chicago, I was like, how bad could it really be? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I really thought I could maybe blend in because I have brown skin, which was not the case at all. I definitely look like a tourist. So I just kind of, with this book, also wanted to remind people that there's a lot of propaganda out there about Africa and South Africa specifically being really dangerous and, hey, don't go there yet. They're not ready for us yet. But it's really not true. I mean, there's a lot of amazing, fun stuff to do there. And I do believe that you can have a safe, great trip just like you would if you came to visit Chicago. You know what I mean? So that's really important that people know, hey, go to Africa.
I like the Starbucks line. There's not a Starbucks in the village at all. And then apparently you actually obviously went out and found some nightlife because the next few pictures are showing some
yes
nightlife. And
that's in the bush, yeah. I
mean,
mean,
this is in the bush?
That's in the bush, yeah. That was a Halloween party in the bush at like the neighboring, I said there was a bunch of resorts. So it was at one of the resorts. Of course, I wasn't staying on a resort. I was in a farm.
Okay.
Farm girl. It's great storytelling. Like, I think it really functions well on both levels of like the visual, but then also the words. Because, I mean, I've known you for a while and you are a writer.
And then this is a closing passage. The evening of my departure was quiet. I could no longer hear the birds and the frogs, just an echo of memories from my trip. The sunset was especially pink, orange, red, and yellow. These colors muted the city. I thought seriously about missing my flight. What's the worst that could happen? You would be a crazy woman. This is something that Sheikh realizes and I already knew about myself. If I stayed, I could continue this fantasy that Africa was my home. I knew that when I returned to Los Angeles, Africa would again feel like just a place and eventually just a memory. When I got to the airport, I felt myself in limbo, crossing between fantasy and reality. My mind and my body had little to do with each other. Talk about that, Danielle.
There's like this real inexplicable connection that you feel when you go over there, and I'm not sure if it has to do with me being African American or what, but there's something about the air and the land of that city city and country that makes you feel rooted in it. And like I said, I mean, Africa had always been a place that I wanted to go and explore, and I think up until I actually got there, it was a fantasy. And even being there, it kind of felt like a fantasy, but eventually it started to feel right and like home. And I think when I knew I had to fly back to LA, it almost felt like I was cutting off a piece of me, like cutting off a limb. It was cutting the roots. So it was really hard to leave. I really thought about staying another week, but I didn't want to freak Shakes out because, we just met.
That would have been a little overwhelming. Did you have you talk about the racial struggles in South Africa. Did you have any insights about what goes on in Chicago and in this country all the time from your visit there?
Yeah, I mean, I really thought, like, why did I come all the way to South Africa just to, like, witness the struggle when I feel like I can really just see it in Chicago. I mean, I have seen it in Chicago growing up my entire life. So there are a lot of parallels. I think one thing that I found really beautiful about South Africa was that it's almost like they just recently started to experience so much growth and such a change, since the ending of apartheid, that the spirit there feels a lot more hopeful, I think. Whereas here, I do believe we can be a bit sarcastic and pessimistic. There, it's almost just like it's less sarcastic and it's more just true and real. And hey, we're still happy. We're like, this is the happiest we've ever been.
Well, it's hard not to be pessimistic these days with Donald Trump as our president.
Oh, the D word.
Yeah, the D word. Danielle, tell folks where they can get We Are the Kids in Africa, and also where, if they want to watch some of your videos, and your your other work, where they can find that.
Yeah, so all of that, the book and all of my past work in Chicago and LA is on my website, which is danielle.net, but not to be confused, there it's Danny, DANI -ELLE.net.
Danielle DeGrasse Alston. The name of the book is We Are the Kids in Africa. I urge everybody to check it out. It is a great book, beautiful pictures, and I didn't know, Danielle, you had that writing thing going on there. So
wow,
you really
we were on the
gassing
school
me up.
newspaper together. Shout out the Whitney Young Beacon.
Yeah.
Did I even write on that?
Yes, we were both on it.
God,
you were an editor, I think.
Yeah, I don't remember that either, Danielle.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, thanks for coming on, Danielle. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Amish Patel is sitting by, and we'll bring her on with her mystery guest. We'll see who the mystery guest is when we return.
The Ben Joravsky Show is supported by the Northwestern Summer Writers Conference. Now in its 15th year, the 3-day conference held in Chicago features a diverse array of workshops, speakers, discussions, and readings. Learn more at sps.northwestern.edu/writers.
Hey, playing now at Steppenwolf Theater, the world premiere of Ms. Black for President. It's inspired by the true, that's true as in it really happened, TRUE story of Joan Jett Black, America's first drag queen presidential candidate. You know who created it, D?
No.
It was created by Tony nominee Tina Landau.
Oh.
And you know who else created it?
No.
Oscar winner Terrell Alvin McCraney. You know him, Moonlight.
Oh, yeah.
For tickets, visit steppenwolf.org. That's Steppenwolf, like the rock group from the 60s, .org.
Hang tight, millennials.
Hey, everybody. What you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
I think we have very good reason to believe that there is an investigation that has been conducted which has produced evidence that tells us that this president and his administration engaged in obstruction of justice. I believe Congress should take the steps towards impeachment. But I want to say this, because it doesn't end there. I also want to say this. I'm also a realist. And when I look at what has been happening over the 2 years and some months that I've been in the United States Senate, I have also witnessed folks in the United States Congress, and in particular in the GOP, who have been presented with many reasons to push back against this president, and they have not. And when we look at the impeachment process, there will be what happens in the House and an investigation that takes place. I think we can be pretty sure that it looks like that is very likely to happen. And then it's going to go over to the Senate. And in the House, there needs to be a vote by a majority, a simple majority, and then it's going to come over to the Senate. And I've not seen any evidence since I've been in the United States Senate, that the United States Senate and the Republicans hold a majority, I've not seen any evidence to suggest that they will weigh on the facts instead of on partisan adherence to being protective of this president. And that's what concerns me and what will be the eventual outcome. So we have to be realistic about what might be the end result, but that doesn't mean the process should not take hold.
All right, everybody, hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Tuesday, July 30th is moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and helping bring back our program. First up, it's the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 in District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. A giant thank you to those unions once again for jumping on board. And, of course, today's program is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. It is Tuesday, July 30th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, our favorite grassroots organizer, Amisha Patel, returns with a mystery guest. Oh, my Lord.
Mystery guest.
Ooh. Also, activist Galen Alcarez, and now your host, Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Yes, indeed. Amisha Patel, our favorite grassroots activist, is in the studio, and Galen is also in the studio. I love it when a guest comes early. And you heard before we came out of break, we heard Kamala Harris talking about impeachment, and Amisha Patel has instructed me, giving me strict instructions. No questions about tonight's debates, all right? But I think I may sneak one in or two when she's not paying attention. And I'm definitely going to give Galen Alcarez some debate questions, so get ready, Galen, all right? Because the debate is tonight, and I will be watching it for certain as to try to figure out who I'm going to vote for to run against President Donnie John Trump. Before I bring Amisha and the mystery guest on, what you got for me, D? You got an update?
Absolutely. Tonight is Democratic debate, round 2, night 1 of 2. A lot of candidates. Gets a little wordy there. It's taking place in Detroit. Ben will be watching from home, clenching his Marianne Williamson button. Tomorrow he'll be taking shots from his Joe Biden thermos. He's going to love it. But the first paid TV advertisement to emerge in the aftermath of the testimony by Robert Mueller on Capitol Hill last week will air during the Democratic primary debates tonight and tomorrow night. The 30-second ad is funded by longshot 2020 presidential is he a candidate? I'm not sure. Tom Steyer.
The billionaire hedge fund guy from California.
Yeah.
He's running. Yep.
Okay,
he's not in the debate.
He
but
is
he's
running. So it's funded by him. The video is called What Mueller Said. Let's listen.
Ooh. And what about total exoneration? Did you actually totally exonerate the president?
No.
Isn't it fair to say that the president's written answers showed that he wasn't always being truthful?
Generally.
You believe that you could charge the president of the United States with obstruction of justice after he left office?
Yes.
The campaign welcomed the Russian help, did they not?
Yes.
And then they lied to cover it up.
Generally, that's true.
To impeach is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Generally, yes, that's correct.
That's correct.
I am Mueller. I barely talk. I don't want to look like I am endorsing impeachment, even though everything I've uncovered says we have to impeach this man. Get ready, Galen Alcarez. These questions are coming to you. Tom Steyer. Tom Steyer, for what folks don't know this, has been financing an impeach Donald Trump campaign that's, I want to say it's about 1.5 years old. He's a billionaire from California, made a fortune as a hedge fund wheeler dealer. And so I guess he decided to jump in the race. I'm not quite sure why he's running for president. I don't see a road to victory for him, a path to victory. But one thing, I'll tell you what, he's got the money, so he's buying the ad. He'll probably get more airtime with his ad than some of the candidates on the stage will get from the debate. So anyway, that's Tom Steyer, and that is the Mueller commercial. And Robert Mueller does not give folks a lot to work with. All right.
Correct.
That's Amisha Patel is my guest, Grassroots Collaborative. She comes on once a month or so, and Amisha always brings a mystery guest with her, almost always does. So Amisha, why don't you introduce our mystery guest?
I'm excited to be here. And and I can talk about the presidential debates. It's just you have many other people who also can. There's like all this local stuff that we want to lift up.
Okay.
But I'm really excited about today's mystery guest. We actually have a few things in common besides our passion for justice and for organizing. My guest and I both are survivors of cancer, both dealing with a similar shared side effect of lymphedema. And, struggling to make sure that all of that, like we stay healthy while we continue to do this work. And she is a bold, brilliant, powerful, fearless leader. I'm so excited to be here with her today and introduce you to Mexico Williams, who's a leader with the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless.
All right.
Hello. How are you guys?
Very good. Very good. Welcome to the show, Mexico. Talk a little bit about your background, how you got to this point in your activism career. You're from Chicago originally?
Yes. I was born and raised here in Chicago, moved away for a little while to Indiana, Wisconsin, but die hard Chicago. Had to come back home. I got involved with advocating and working with Chicago Coalition for the Homeless as a grassroots leader because I had stage 3 cancer, and because of my diagnosis, it was the first time in my life I couldn't get a job and work and take care of my kids because the treatment was so grueling. It took a lot out of me. It took me from working and taking care of senior people in their homes to needing somebody that's a personal assistant to be able to help me out with my daily needs and different stuff like that. I became depressed, and I didn't know a lot. Things had changed and shifted and moved around so much in Chicago when I left and when I came back in 2012. Didn't know about a lot of community services and stuff. Some of the ones that I knew, they had dried up and they were gone and they didn't have funding. And then I just ran into this great organization called the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless. And from there, just working with them on different campaigns from the Fight for 15 to the COIN Act, which I went to testify in Springfield to have temporary assistance for needy families. That's a supplemental grant from the state of Illinois to help families to be able to take care of their children and, basic needs or whatever per month. It wasn't enough. It was only $474 a month for a family of 4. And mind you, I'm coming off of working 2 jobs, one for the state of Illinois and one for Catholic Charities. Like I said, working with seniors and those that are disabled within their homes. And I was making $13, $14 per hour on both jobs, bringing home $2,000-$3,000 or more per month, and going to school full time at the University of Phoenix on campus here in Chicago downtown. And to go down from all of the money and being as active as I was and doing the different things and being able to provide for my children a roof over their head, food and clothing, to nothing, and then not knowing about any organizations that could help me. I ended up in the shelter while I was in cancer treatment, and it was really devastating. Just something that you never want anyone else to have to go through, no other cancer patient.
Let's just talk about that briefly. My goodness, it'd be a shocking to have to go from having a home to a shelter, but to have to go home to a shelter while you're having cancer treatment. That must have been particularly brutal.
That was very brutal because at the time, it wasn't something I wanted to go through. I wanted to be at home when I got out of chemo, being tired and exhausted. And at one point, I was allergic to some of the chemo medicine, so they had to give me extra Benadryl. So I'm really, really sleepy and, oozy and way messed up. And it's a part of the treatment, though. Yeah. And it was the only particular chemo I could receive for the breast cancer that I had because it was stage 3, and it was very, very rigorous.
And so, was there any private place at the shelter you go to just to be sick, or you just were out there in the open with everybody?
I have to tell a story on that one. I'll try to keep it real brief. My children and I were placed, we were taken from the north side of Chicago where we would normally lived, the end of Lakeshore Drive, and we ended up being in a shelter in the hundreds on 122nd and Halstead on the way, way, way far south side. This shelter was a mini mansion that had been converted into a shelter for those that are homeless. I'm not saying that I'm being petty. I'm appreciative of having the opportunity and not having to be outside and sleep in my car like I thought we would have to do. But the shelter had no doors because prior participants would come in there and get high, and they wouldn't open the door, and other different issues. This happened 10 years before my children and I even got there, but they had no doors, so I didn't have anywhere to relax. My children, I had to bus them 2.5 to 3.5 hours away from, I kept them in their regular school. I didn't want them, that's the only thing that they had was stable, was the fact that they went to the school that they had been in since they were in kindergarten and preschool.
So they went back to the north side?
Yes.
So you're at 100 south. The kids are schlepping all the way up to the north side.
Yes.
How'd they get there every day?
I would take them. We would get up about 5:30 in the morning, leave out, make it up there to school to get them to school by 7:45, so they made sure that they ate breakfast there, and then I would go to the UI Health Cancer Center and get my treatment, go back to the shelter, lay down for a little while, recuperate as much as I could, and then jump right back up and head back up north to get them, and we did that same trip for a while. We stayed in that shelter for about 3 months. Then we went to a different shelter called the Madonna House Shelter. It's behind Wrigley Field. It was much different. There I received the key to a room for myself and my children. There was 6 beds. We had our own bathroom. Everything was separate. It was different. It was like having a mini studio apartment. It was a complete difference. I was able to sit down, lay down and rest there. It wasn't like the other shelter. And the women were more came forth, helped me more. You know, they knew I couldn't do a whole lot because I was so sick, and I had been debilitated to the point of being able to walk on my own, then to having to use a walker because of the neuropathy and the chemo at that particular point in time. It was so strong. But it was just that particular change was able to give me a little glimpse of hope. They gave you something there called wraparound services, and it was something I didn't know about in the prior shelter.
What does that sound? I don't know what that was. So are you still in the shelter, or are you...
No, I have permanent stable housing, and myself and my children, we live in the Hyde Park area on the south side of Chicago, off of 51st and Drexel Boulevard. It's a beautiful neighborhood. It's the neighborhood of the former president, Barack Obama. His home is only about 3 blocks from where we're at. It's a very beautiful up-and-coming area. We're close to the beach again, which is a good thing. The kids love that because they love to go to the beach. There's lots of parks and different recreation and things like, you know, they can be there and be kids again. They don't have to be cooped up in the shelter. They don't have to be a little more embarrassed by the fact that they didn't have a home to call in on. We have permanent stable housing now.
All right, let's bring Amisha into the conversation. The T-shirt, it says "Bring Chicago Home." Talk about the "Bring Chicago Home" campaign.
Well, this is an ordinance that the Coalition for the Homeless has been working on for several years, and it just makes so much common sense. The idea is to figure out how are we going to really fund the work to end homelessness in our city. For years, people have talked about multi-year plans to end homelessness, and we still see actually homelessness skyrocketing in the city of Chicago. The ordinance that CCH is trying to move is really about making sure that we've got the resources to fight this, and it is an epidemic, and it means that people, as you heard from Maxica's story, that you're let alone your own struggles and challenges in your life, but you're dealing with those on top of the fact of not having a home, and you have children, and you have all of these things to think about. So this ordinance would basically tax have a new tax on the sale of luxury properties, and the luxury properties, then the funds from that tax would go to directly support homeless prevention, homeless services in the city of Chicago. I think this is modeled off of some work in California. Is that right, Mexico?
Yes, off of a progressive real estate tax that they did there. To end homelessness, the funds were dedicated and used for that particular purpose. It's not an overnight fix. Like I say, it takes a while. They did it about a year or two ago, and they're still progressing. It's just like we could service so many people over the years with this particular money, the $100 million that it would generate, or even $150 million per year. So 1.2 percentage point raise on the taxes of those luxury homes, $1 million and over, and it's supposed to generate $100 to $150 million a year. That will help to end the specific crisis that we have, and we have a real urgency in a crisis here in the city of Chicago, similar to the one that was in California.
So it's just slapping that tax. What is it? What percent did you say?
1.2 percentage
So
points.
1.2% on what the sale of a home is.
$1 million
Of a $1 million
and over.
If it has to be over $1 million, and that money would. All right, now Misha, you know the politics of Chicago. First of all, to get it passed would be interesting. You're going to have some opposition to that, and then to have it, if you do get it passed, have it channeled dedicated to homelessness. That'll be another fight. Let's talk about the first fight, the resistance over passing this tax.
Well, I think there's one good thing is that Mayor Lightfoot as a candidate really was supportive of this ordinance, and spoke strongly in support of it. And many aldermen who got elected also are strongly in support of this. There are, of course, a new set of progressive aldermen in caucus in the council, but there also is a broader. I think you're seeing a pull more to the left of the council because of this in this recent election, and people really trying to be very clearly call themselves progressive and to fight for those issues. I think the challenge, of course, is going to be, there's opposition as from the real estate sector, which is powerful. Lots of contributions from the real estate industry to elected officials. They consistently are, of course, trying to make sure that nothing hurts their profits. So there is going to be some work to really make sure that we've got the votes, but there is a lot of support in the council for this ordinance. The organizing, like I said, has been going on for a long period of time. And, so I think the challenge is really, going through that process to make sure that we have all the voices heard about, why we need to do this in the city at this moment.
Who would pay the tax, the seller or the buyer?
Max, isn't it the seller?
The seller.
The seller. So it would be the person who's cashing in on his or her multi-million-dollar home would pay a portion of what he or she gets in this tax. All right, so Mayor Lightfoot endorsed it on the campaign trail. You've been around as well, almost as long as I have, and well, not nearly as long as I have, Amisha, but what a politician says on the campaign trail and what a politician does once in office are often two different things. Is she showing support for it in the city council right now, advocating for it?
Well, I think, we're heading into, as always, a contentious budget process. They have been hinting at for some time that this crisis is much bigger than even they expected. I think that's no news. To me, there's no surprising news here. Like there's always the issue of not having enough revenue into the city, which is why we push forward progressive revenue proposals to fix this. Right? Like this city is there's tremendous wealth in the city. There is no reason why we don't have the resources that we need to fill the needs of everyday residents in the city of Chicago. So CCH's proposal is again another really sharp way to do that, right? So, hey, this is millionaires who can well afford to pay a little bit more on the sale of their luxury home that directly goes to support homeless services and homeless prevention. It's a no-brainer. So the challenge here is that, like Mayor Lightfoot's looking for revenue from all kinds of places to meet her budget deficit. But we have, like I said, we have lots of other places where that revenue can come from, and it should not be taken from this idea that is very specific about addressing homelessness. It is not meant to be hey, here's how we're going to fix a budget gap that has been created by the fact that we don't tax the rich enough, that we don't make sure that businesses pay their fair share. Rahm Emanuel, in his first acts as mayor 8 years ago, eliminated the corporate head tax. let's get that back. Let's actually do it differently and raise even more resources than that bill did. There's, I think we've got to really look at all kinds of solutions to fix the budget, but that's going to be the pressure is, oh, hey, you have an idea for over $100 million. I'm going to take that. And we've got to really push and fight to say that is actually how you fix the budget is by making sure that you address homelessness and you fight against income inequality and you fight against the devastation of poverty in the city of Chicago.
When you say fund, the money would go to fund homeless services, talk about some of the services that it would fund.
What it was the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless Leaders, because we have previously or currently are experiencing homelessness. We sat down. We did thorough talks with so many different leaders and so many different people in homeless shelters and asked them, what are your barriers? What kept you from getting permanent stable housing? Why are you in a shelter? What led you to be homeless? And we used those particular barriers and we developed something called wraparound services. What I received at that particular shelter, there'll be child care, there'll be job training, helping getting them on the waiting list or getting them to permanent stable housing, and the funding and resources through workshop classes they have to complete at different levels, like budgeting, learning how and what you're supposed to do in an apartment, because everybody doesn't know to clean up. Everybody doesn't know how that, they're going to come through with inspections. Everybody doesn't know their rules and rights and that there is tenant landlord ordinances. No, everybody doesn't know that. You spend so much time, and we have situations called doubled up here in the city of Chicago, and most people don't recognize it as homelessness. But at Chicago Coalition for the Homeless, we do find it is a significance in being doubled up. It's a form of homelessness. You go stay with a relative because you're down and out, and you never get back on your feet. You have the potential and the idea that you're going to get over it, but you don't. And that brings our homeless population to over 86,000. And with that being said, this particular revenue fund will help with that, with the wraparound services. We want to get them the mental health. We want to get them health insurance. We want to get them their mind and body and their spirit back, build up their momentum, because these people have been so broken over the years and let down by society and the different things that are going on. We want our children to go to school and be safe and comfortable, stay in the school that they were in, just because they're going through a homeless transition, to stay in that school, graduate from their school with their peers, to feel, because for a child, and I learned it from my children, that was the most influential point, to keep them in that school. It was the best decision I made. I might have, lost a lot of sleep over it.
Driving that
and
train
they lost a lot of sleep. But you know what? They said it was the best thing ever. And
are they still going to the north side school?
Actually, they're in the Hyde Park area. We changed their school. Okay. They were willing to change, and they actually liked their school now. It took a year for them to warm up because they had been at other schools since they were in preschool.
Yeah, I want to go to the north side school. And 86,000, is that what you said? 86,000 homeless people in the city of Chicago? How wow, 86. So would this fund raise enough money to house 86,000 people, or is it just a drop in the bucket?
I mean, we definitely need more resources to fully end homelessness. But I think, as Mexico laid out, this would be a significant addition to help people move out of homelessness. This idea, I think people don't really understand, if you haven't experienced homelessness, what it actually takes to find housing. And there's so many misconceptions about people who are homeless, and so much of this idea of if people just had a job, then they would be fine. And I think what you hear is that what you're hearing from Mexico is there's all of the supports and resources that people need to be able to get have a shot at getting some stability in their lives. And so, I think the true cost to ending homelessness is certainly way more than what this particular legislation will provide for. But this is a significant start. We, as a city, consistently underfund and under-resource this huge set of people in our city, and it's a shame. There's all this focus on downtown development and, a global city and gleaming skyscrapers. And meanwhile, it's like, and the common approach is like, well, we just don't want to look at homeless people. So we're going to move that encampment. We're going to move people out of that viaduct. We're going to push people away so you don't have to look at them. And it's an outrage. We are not addressing the issue, and this is at least the beginning of how we can actually address the issue.
All right. Speaking of gleaming downtowns, Misha Patel many times on the show has talked about her group's battle against the Lincoln Yard development, where the city, you could help a lot of homeless people with this one, Mexico. The city is setting aside, I think, $1.3 billion with a B to build a upscale development on the gentrifying North Side neighborhood that, in my humble opinion, does not need a subsidy to be developed. So what's the latest on the lawsuit against Lincoln Yards, which, by the way, deals like Lincoln Yards totally are related to homelessness and the rising costs of living in the city of Chicago. So talk about the fight against Lincoln Yards.
Yeah, so, we filed this lawsuit in April against the creation of this TIF district in particular, saying that it violated TIF statute, and it also is a violation of the Illinois Civil Rights Act. So the city, not a big surprise, has filed a motion to dismiss our lawsuit. And basically, one of the key things that they're trying to say is that as an organization, Grassroots Collaborative and Raise Your Hand are the two plaintiffs that we don't have standing to take this lawsuit on. So our lawyers are working hard to to go in front of the judge September 11th to basically make the case for why we absolutely have standing and how this lawsuit needs to move forward. So. We'll see what the city does then, but at this point, they're trying to get rid of us.
So when you say the city, this is the city that's being led by Mayor Lori Lightfoot.
Yes, the city of Chicago.
Just want to clarify
that city.
This is not like some. This is not. I can't blame this on Rahm. This is Mayor Lori Lightfoot's law department that is fighting this.
Yes, this is that law department which is trying to say, trying to get rid of this lawsuit.
And what reasoning do they have for fighting this particular lawsuit? I mean, I understand the specifics. I understand the specific legal argument that they're making. They're making a legal argument that you don't have standing, which is just a way to get rid of you. I understand that.
Right.
If they find a sympathetic judge, they will get rid of you on that one. But beyond that, I mean, Lori Lightfoot, when she ran for mayor of the city of Chicago, speaking of promises that politicians often make, said she opposed the Lincoln Yard project. She said it to my face. In fact, I believe she may have been sitting in that very chair where you're sitting right now, Amisha Patel, when she said she was against the Lincoln Yard. So what has happened to change to Lori Lightfoot's worldview of Lincoln Yards?
Well, the mayor hasn't made a statement directly, but clearly her law department is making a statement.
Maybe she doesn't know the law department has done it. Lori, the law department is fighting this.
I don't know what she knows.
Possible, yeah.
I do think it's kind of standard practice that the city will try to get rid of any lawsuit against the city. So that may be where we're at. But we're not going anywhere, and this is going to move forward. And she's going to have to, make a public stance on this. She's going to have to get engaged in this. And so we'll see. But she was, absolutely campaigned to being against Lincoln Yards and saying that developments like this should not happen, and subsidized developments like this should not happen. That is our main point. This TIF district does not make sense to be created. It is, again, one of the wealthiest parts of the city, if not the whole state. And they don't need a handout. And again, when by creating a TIF district in this area, we are locking in all of that rising property value into this TIF district. So instead of going to social services, to schools, parks, libraries, mental health, like public mental health, any of the stuff that those tax dollars should go to, instead it's going back to the developer. Mm-hmm. And this is again the problem. We have to actually force, the fact that we have to do a lawsuit to try to make this change. It's unfortunate we have to do it, but how many decades have we been seeing that this has been the status quo of the city? Doesn't matter who's in office. This is what happens: is you prioritize those developers and you make sure they get whatever they need. Meanwhile, we have 86,000 people who are homeless, not getting any kind of resource that they need to actually move forward in their lives.
Yeah, and I'll add one more point that I always love to add whenever we talk about TIFs. It's a property tax hike, people. You're paying more in property taxes, okay?
Right, because if that TIF district exists, that means who has to make up the difference of where those tax dollars aren't coming from is everyone else.
Everybody else.
Everyone else is getting a property tax hike every single time we create a TIF district in a rich neighborhood like like Lincoln Yards.
Any TIF
Anywhere.
district.
Well, yeah.
So all my listeners out there in the 41st Ward, your taxes are going up. All my listeners out there in the 45th Ward, your taxes are going up. All my listeners out there in the 13th Ward, your taxes go. I believe all these aldermen voted for that TIF district. How about your good friend Jim Kappelman in the 46th Ward? He voted for it. Taxes going up. How about your good friend Tom Tunney in the 44th Ward? He voted for it. Taxes going up. Did Brendan O'Reilly in the 42nd Ward vote for it? I think he voted no, right? I can't remember. Anyway, I was going to go down the whole north side because Galen's from North Sider, but
there were a handful of no votes.
Yeah,
but.
a handful. By the way, speaking of no votes, we had on the show Byron Sixto Lopez, the alderman of 25th Ward, and this is a delightful irony of the city of Chicago. Follow me, what I'm about to tell you. Mayor Rahm and Danny Solis, who's the alderman of the 25th Ward, they had this great idea. I know what we're going to do, boss. What we're going to do, we're going to put all the developing areas in and around the loop on the south, just like in the south and near west sides of the loop, into one ward controlled by young Danny Solis, because he'll do whatever developers and Rahm say. Great idea. Let's do it. So they did. They got the post office in there. They got 78 in there. What happens? Danny Solis gets caught wearing a wire on Ed Burke. He can't run for office. So suddenly the guy who's going to take care of all the development deals, this is only in Chicago, Galen, suddenly the guy who's going to take care of all the development deals, out. He's not running for re-election because of me. She wanted to spend more time with his children. That's what he said. And as opposed to be wearing the wire for Ed Burke. Mexico's going, I've been around Chicago a long time. North side, south side, it's all the same. Anyway, so now we got Byron Sixto Lopez is the alderman. This guy's to the left of me. It'd be like if me were running the 25th Ward. Well, it may be not to the left of me, sort of where I am. But don't you think that's a delightful irony? You're fighting the city tooth and nail in Lincoln Yards, and now you got Byron Sixto Lopez controlling the 78, which is another giant TIF.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's great. And I think it means a whole, it's a whole different direction of the city and that neighborhood in particular, but beyond, right? The ripple effects of Solis not being in office and Byron being there is very exciting. And I think the thing we have to look for now, and what you've already started to see, is that developers are starting to say, okay, I don't want TIF money. I want money from the state, because we are organizing to make it really difficult to take TIF money, right? We have been fighting, lifting this up, and I'm saying we, like, including you in this fight, right, Ben, of like being able, like, really lifting up how TIFs have been just been abused and have been used to continue to line the pockets of wealthy folks and folks near downtown and developers. So what you see now is that developers are actually saying, oh, no, I don't want TIF money. But they're going to the state and they're asking, like the one central developer that is, asking for, huge amount of money.
I think
from
it's $6 billion. Don't quote me.
I think it's $6 billion. Yeah, $6 billion from the state. You have actually the developer from Midwest, the 78 TIF, actually backing legislation in Springfield that would give developers who got subsidy money to create their building, like Midwest, then I'll be going to Springfield to say, and you know what, I shouldn't pay taxes on my affordable units that I had to create, but you're creating them because you got all this billions of dollars in TIF money. Like, they're looking for back end, multiple ways to get money, multiple layers of money back for creating a handful of units.
Yeah, no, it's a slip.
So we've got to watch this, right? Because it's our organizing is working, and we're squeezing them, and they're trying to pop out in another place.
By the way, I must correct myself. When I was in my great riff about the TIFs, I believe the 45th Ward, I included that on the list, but John Arena, I believe, voted against the TIF. So, yes. John, sorry about that, all right? Letter coming in from John Arena. All right, Maxica, Amisha said, don't ask me any questions about tonight's debate, all right? But, I can't help myself, all right? So let me just ask the two of you before I let you get out of here. What are you in general looking for? What would you like to hear from the Democratic candidates? How about if I present it that way? I'll start with you, Amisha. What would you like to hear from the Democratic candidates tonight?
I want to hear real vision and a plan behind that vision. I think we have apparently, by the luck of the draw, an all-white cast of candidates tonight. All the candidates tonight are all white candidates for running for office for presidential versus tomorrow night. And so let's talk about white supremacy. Let's talk about the role, a bigger vision for this country that includes the role that white people should be playing to make sure that this country moves forward in the way that it needs to. I think there's people care about all kinds of things. If we look at war and militarism, it's a huge impact on our lives because that's, again, where our tax dollars are going, is going to war and militarism. War and militarism directly connects to climate change with all of, all of this is all related and connected. So to me, I think we need to hear about a big, bold vision around the U.S.'s role as a, kind of in the global community, but also just like what is the plan and vision for communities of color in this country, and how are we moving, sort of developing and sustaining strategies to help forward communities of color in this country. We don't hear enough presidential candidates talk about racial equity, talk about people just take voters of color for granted, in particular Black voters. And I'm looking for someone to actually to paint a vision that is exciting, that will actually inspire people to come out and vote, because I think that's our biggest challenge.
Mexico, what are you looking for?
I just want them to focus on balancing the inequalities and focusing on those mainstream things that are going on right now in society, like banish and get rid of the inequalities. And that can go from race to the homelessness, to those that are less fortunate, low income, those who need education and training. Bring it back and putting in society what we need, not all these other issues and walls and different things like that. And just making sure voters know that they need to get out and vote. Don't sit at home and say and keep on talking about, oh, this should be this, that should be that. Hey, get out, get your voters registration done, because we're going around doing it. Be a part of the census as well. It's coming next year. I got to put in those pluggers. And get out there and vote for the resolution to end homelessness in the city of Chicago, because it's based also on the voters. We put the resolution of the red out there already. It's been introduced to 2 committees. We're waiting for a hearing on the resolution. Once that hearing goes by, City Council will pass the resolution out. Then us voters here in the city of Chicago, we make the decision and we make that final vote on whether it's passed or not.
So in other words, you're going to have a referendum for the people of the city of Chicago to get to vote on whether they have this tax for. And we don't have Rahm. In the old days, Mayor Rahm, would have his flunkies in the city council, and what a slickster he was. There's a rule that you can only have 3 questions on any ballot, so we would put what color hair should I have, blue or black, and then that would be like a referendum question, and they would bump your question. Are we going to get some of the same games from Lori Lightfoot on this one, or is she going to allow this to come to a vote?
I mean, I hope not. I mean, but this is a different category of a referendum. Like the non-binding referendum is where there's a limit, is my belief, that this is a different, there isn't something like that.
Yeah, talk to Pat Quinn about that, all right? He'll tell you a whole lecture on the games people play when they want to block people from getting these questions for the public. Amisha Patel and Mexico Williams, thank you so much for coming on the show. Is there any kind of website that people could go to get more information about this campaign?
So I'll say for Grassroots Collaborative, you can find us on Facebook and on Twitter, and our website is grassrootscollaborative.org.
And you can also find the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless. You can go on their site, or you can bring the Chicago Home campaign. We also have a site for that. We have a Facebook page for it as well. Like I said, it's based on us voters. It's not just so much about the city council. We have a stake in this too.
I hear you 100%. All right, very good. Thank you so much, you too. I got Galen Alcaraz on deck. We're going to bring her on when we return.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Get to know your city on one of Chicago Architecture Center's 65 walking tours. Hear the unforgettable secrets and stories behind Chicago architecture from our expert docents. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a tour right now. Oh, wow, look at that building. Get a special discount for Illinois residents from July 15th to August 15th. All Illinois residents get 50% off select walking tours. Visit architecture.org/IL-resident.
This is an awfully big body of water. We're looking for a needle in a haystack. And we're talking about a needle that moves constantly.
He's checked the floating traps he hand curated.
Right now it's a combination of drumsticks, rats, and smelt.
Yum.
Well, as far as the gator goes, that's a pretty good offering. We're hoping that the wind blowing the scent across the water will catch his attention.
We're all speculating on whether he grew up in somebody's, bathtub or backyard or something.
He's enjoying the 5 feet of water. He probably was raised in 6 inches. If we could find the animal, we can capture the animal.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan. Our friends at the Chicago Sun-Times are offering you, yes, you, the listener, an exclusive deal on unlimited digital access to all the stories you love. Unlock every feature, video, and podcast just like the Ben Joravsky Show by signing up now for a digital subscription. For a limited time only, you can lock in our lowest rate yet, only $29.99 for a full year of all the news that you need to know. Stay up to date on breaking stories, get the deep dives and investigations from Sun-Times reporters, cheer for the big games with the best sports team in the city, and go deep inside City Hall with best-in-class political reporting. $29.99 for a full year of unlimited access. I looked online. I checked. So before I say this, just know that I checked and looked. You can't do better than that. Now back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yes, indeed, we are live. Galen Alcarez in the studio with me. Before I bring Galen on, you got an update, D?
Yeah, I sure do. Tonight is debate night number 1 of the second debate. Round 2 is tomorrow. Sorry, it's a little confusing, guys. Just so many candidates, it gets a little confusing. But thanks to our good friends over at CNN.com, they have gave us 6 things to watch.
Okay,
for tonight's debate. All right, so what we'll do here is we'll do 3, and then before we leave, we'll do 3 more. So, what are some things that name one thing, Ben, that we can watch for on night 1
tonight?
Yeah,
Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. That's tonight's main attraction, in my humble opinion. They're going to be fighting for the progressive, lefty, whatever you want to call it, faction of the Democratic Party, and so they're going to have to. I don't know if they're going to fight with each other. I don't know how they're going to deal with it. They're going to have to be civil to one another because they've been allies all these years, Galen. But at the same time, they're each competing for the same group. I mean, you've been there. You were in for office. You know what that's like when everybody's going for the same faction. How do you do it? You're nice to each other, but at the same time, you got a little nastiness. You sneak in, a little progressive. How do you do it? Passive aggressive. How do you do it?
I stayed cordial. I stuck to my game plan and my talking points and what I brought to the table. I never ever focused on the other candidates. I never mentioned them or anything. I was specifically running against the commissioner, and so that's how I did it.
So your advice to Bernie and Elizabeth Warren?
I don't know if I have any advice to them because, people they're going to do what,
Bernie's going to do what Bernie's going to do.
Exactly. And I won't be watching the debates. So,
Galen, are you not going to be watching the debates?
No, Ben, I'm going to be at a concert.
Oh, okay. Well, they can watch them after the concert. All right.
So number 6 here. Can Steve Bullock bust the governor's slump? This comes from CNN.com. There will be one new face on the stage over these next 48 hours. Montana Governor Steve Bullock. Bullock's late entry into the race saw him closed out of the Miami debates, but he qualified for the Detroit stage and will on Tuesday night be given his introduction to a national audience of Democratic voters. So Steve Bullock, the debut of Steve Bullock.
We talked about him earlier in the show, and this is the gentleman who's going to be positioning himself as a Democrat who can appeal to Trump voters as a governor of Montana, where it's a red state. And so that will be his appeal. He's going to have a very limited time to make that appeal. This is his introduction to Democratic voters because, as Dennis just pointed out, he was not in the first debate. So I don't know, he's going to have to talk really fast or pull a de Blasio. I don't know if you saw the first debate, but de Blasio, his tactic was just to yell and blurt things out, the mayor of New York, yell and blurt things out. So this gentleman is going to try to present himself as the kind of Democrat that Trump voters would support.
So that was number 6. We'll do the other 5 before we head out of here. Back to you, Ben.
All right, very good. Galen Alcarez, community activist, former political candidate for Cook County Commissioner. And Galen, when I was talking to you before the show, two things to talk about in our city. Crime and corruption just popped off the top of the list. And crime, the news is very distressing in the front page of the Sun-Times. 2 mothers murdered in drive-by. Chantel Grant and Andrea Stoudemire worked with Mothers Against Senseless Killings to stop gun violence in the Gresham neighborhood on Friday night. It cost them their lives. All the murder is upsetting, but this one in particular, going after activists who were trying to take a stand in a drive-by shooting. I don't know. It's so senseless. I don't even know where to begin.
All of the crime is senseless. It's pretty tragic. Every single day, all day, the news has horror stories about something or another. And it's distressing. What can you do? You want to be a part of the solution. And so you go out there and you work for your community. You stand up for your community, and then something like this happens. But just to kind of piggyback off of your previous guest, talking about poverty and inequity, this is where this crime is coming from. Mm-hmm. And so you have marginalized communities that absolutely have nothing to live for. You have people out there that have nothing to live for. They don't have anything to kind of look forward to. And they don't have any resources. And so then you see carjackings go up. And in carjackings, people are going to get hurt or get killed. You see people hanging out on the corners, selling drugs or selling whatever so that they can make money. You don't have enough of anything in the communities that really need it, which is one of the reasons why I was so aggravated behind the whole Lincoln Yards vote, because you had Black aldermen in these poor neighborhoods voting for that. But they don't vote for things in their communities. They don't say, hey, you want my vote and you want my support, then we're going to have to do some stuff in my community. No, they don't do that. And so this is what you have. This is the outcome of all that. When I was growing up, we looked forward to summer, get out of school summer, because we could get summer jobs. Like every kid was working a summer job. We had plenty of places to go shop in our neighborhoods where we would cash our little $160 check from Cedar program and go buy some jeans at a corner store. You don't have that stuff anymore. And so when you don't have these things, you take away everything. You take away mental health clinics. You close Black and brown schools only in those neighborhoods on South and West Sides. You make sure that economic development is stalled and doesn't happen. You get all of this stuff. This is the outgrowth of all of this. It's tragic. It's sad.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'm listening to you, and this has been a charge leveled against the city of Chicago for as long as I can remember. And also, I always say this to people, Chicago's a very violent city. There's been crime in the city of Chicago forever. And so I never understood why the obvious connection between lack of jobs and lack of investment and crime is never made in a very practical, pragmatic way. So you talk about the TIF program, the largest economic development program the city has, the largest source of discretionary income that the city has. And yet most of it is spent on neighborhoods that are already doing well. Right. So they don't spend it on South or West Side neighborhoods that are really struggling.
Exactly.
And then the aldermen vote for the program.
Exactly. We live in a racist city, Ben. That's what it all boils down to. Because anytime you see this is the issue and this is the problem, and you do everything to avoid making a solution to that problem, that's the issue. And we see it for what it is. And of course, you're going to have those, kiss butt aldermen, Black aldermen, that's going to do whatever master says because, you know, they're getting kickbacks. And so, yeah, we've got, you know, our alderman that's voting for this stuff, but, you know, they don't have resources in the neighborhoods.
You did a video. I saw it on Facebook. Talk up a little bit about it. You're a runner, and it was a video you shot. I think you were going out for a run. Talk about that video that you shot.
So a couple of years ago, and this is like nothing new, but you know, our kids went to Franklin Fine Arts. I'm big into art. I love art. Art changes neighborhoods. Art changes lives. And because I grew up on the north side, I know what is possible, what we could have. And I'm disturbed when I'm running through the neighborhood because I'm training for marathons. So when I'm running through the neighborhoods, I've got to run over broken glass. I've got to run over dirty, dark viaducts with tons of garbage under there. But that's not like that. If I go up on Wilson and run through the viaduct, or, you know, over in Hyde Park, I don't see that same thing. It's like it really is a tale of two cities. And so I was stopped in the park by a reporter with WBZ a couple of years ago. And they were asking me, you know, what problems do you have, or any question you could ask or whatever.
Wait, tell me, you just happened to be running through the park and some random reporter came up to you?
Yes.
Or did he know you were going to be there?
No, they didn't know I was going to be there.
So it was like a man on the street interview, or in this case, a woman on the street.
It was a
interview.
woman on the street and her other person that was with her.
Okay.
I was in Jesse Owens Park. I was in the grass. I was trying to putt some golf. I was pretending like I was golfing. I was trying to learn how to do it. But anyway, that's another story.
Okay.
And she saw me and she walked up to me and she asked me, and she was like, you know, if you answer these questions, you know, you might be, your question might get onto our station. Mm-hmm. And so I asked the question, like, that question about viaducts. I had a series of questions, but that one stood out to them. And then they kind of ran this social media contest where it's like, which question is the best for us to actually cover? And they picked, you know, people voted and that question was picked. And then the reporter came out, you know, interviewed me at home. We walked down to the viaduct, one of the viaducts. He took pictures. We talked there. And it's been kind of like a passion of mine, because they look horrible. Mm-hmm. They look absolutely horrible. And I have to run through this. And so quite conveniently, during the last aldermanic election, one of the viaducts got cleaned up, painted, and it's new lights. But there's other viaducts there as well. And why can't we just put like artwork or something on the walls, or do something? Like, it's all these amazing ideas, or put art in our communities. You know, why can't we have the same type of stuff? Because we don't have elected officials that are visionaries. We have just the, you know, old machine people that got their positions because they relative or whatever, and they just want to keep a paycheck. And so that's the reason why we have the stuff. And those people are connected to the seniors that vote in the neighborhoods. And a lot of those retirees, you know, got their jobs through Stroger. And so it's all this whole historical crap that it's like, come on. When are y'all gonna, you know, change some stuff around? This stuff is so played out, which leads into the whole Burke thing.
Alderman Ed Burke.
Yeah. John Cass had a real good article some time ago about, he was interviewing David Axelrod. And it was basically like, David was like, that time is come and gone. Burke should have let that go. Like, they don't do that type of politics no more. You know, and so that's how he pretty much got caught up, is because he's hanging on to a 50-year-old system in his head. And it's not operating like that anymore. They're not saying they're not stealing no more. It says not operating like that anymore. And so, you know, you got all this corruption that's happening. And then we wonder why, you know, stuff like that is on the front of the paper.
Yeah,
It's
I would just say this to David Axelrod, who supported Mayor Richard M. Daley all those years. Ed Burke was running the same thing during those years, and it was no more right in the 90s than it is. Not like something happened in 2019.
Exactly.
All of a sudden, no, it's wrong. You know, it was just as wrong to have a conflict of interest as a property tax lawyer shaking down people trying to. So in the 90s as it was in the O's. So
exactly. And speaking of the 90s, and when you're talking about we live in a violent city, you know, the crime back in the 90s was higher than it is now. We're seeing it more because of this dismantle of the Chicago housing developments. And so then you had all these gangs and everything filtered out into neighborhoods, and territorial things were happening. And so it actually was higher back then than it is now.
No, it was. I point this out all the time. I moved to Chicago in 1981, Galen, and there was crime in the city of Chicago. There was 2 policemen were shot on the south side of Chicago. I think it was 1982. It's like the city, the tension that existed in the city. That's when Burge was. You know, they were dragging in black people and arresting them for just the reaction to those 2 murders. It was an eye-opening experience for me. I was a babe in the woods, you know what I mean? I wasn't a hardened Chicagoan. Right. And so, yeah, it's just nothing new about it, but that you're right. You hit it on the head. That attitude that Chicago has, it's like, you know, we can cut a corner, or we could shake someone down, or we know this one, so we can get a little piece off the top. That's so Chicago. Yeah. Now, you mentioned this, and I've known Galen for a while, and I want to say many years because she's a lot younger than I am. But you're a North Sider, and it was so funny because Maxica, who was just in the studio, lives in Hyde Park now, but she's a North Sider. People don't realize it. There were a lot of black people on the North Side of Chicago back in the 80s, 70s,
exactly,
and 90s, and now you're a South Sider. But talk about the difference between the North and South Side.
Okay, so my deal was we grew up off of 79th Street, and then when I went to high school, we moved to the North Side. And that was all fueled by the death of my father, so we ended up moving to the North Side. We found ourselves up behind Wrigley Field, one of our first North Side apartments, and then we moved down into Lincoln Park, actually right across from Newberry School, and then moved over into, off Eugenie and so forth. And that's how I grew up. And then I raised my kids over there. So I've been back on the South Side for 10 years, but I still really consider myself a North Sider in a lot of ways. But the differences are stark. Like, there is absolutely no comparison. Even when you go down into Hyde Park, South Side, that has a lot of resources, is still not the same as the North Side. Like, on the North Side, I never, ever was fearful about, like, even walking down the street to go to a 24-hour Walgreens or a 24-hour Starbucks. There was always transportation, all times of the night. There's always people out on the street. Not saying that crime can't happen anywhere, because it definitely can. But in terms of all the resources, whatever I wanted to eat, wherever I wanted to shop, there's absolutely no comparison. Where I'm at, I really have to drive. There is a 24-hour CVS up on 87th and Stony, but there's nothing else that would be like a 24-hour thing. And grocery stores, the Jewels and the Pete's, but they can put additional. Even if you go further southwest into Evergreen Park, they can put all these resources every place, but not on the South Side. Like, why can't we have some bookstores, some coffee, tea shops, a UPS store, just all those things, but we don't. And that is really the fault of the elected officials.
And how so?
Because they are not visionaries, and they don't advocate for their communities the way they should. They don't stand up for their communities the way they should. Everything is about what they can get out of the deal. Because, out of all the things that you can think about Michelle Harris wants another senior citizen home on 95th and Stone, like almost it's like 94th and Stony, with a restaurant that's going to be 24 hours, a restaurant, Huddle House or whatever it's called, which has a background in racial discrimination from the South. So that's going to be the restaurant that's going to be on the ground level of a senior home. Like, why? That's not even visionary. That doesn't even make sense. That whole area right there, if you've ever tried to drive through there or after work, you can't. Like, I go all the way around another whole way to avoid that area. So that's going to be a senior. You know where Bronzeville Children's Museum is, right there at the corner? Mm-hmm. It's going to be that open lot that's right next to that. That's where it's going to be. And they're in the process of building that. But that developer is a big contributor to Michelle Harris's campaign. And so you've got people that are always just doing stuff because they get something out of it, not for the good of their community or their people. I don't understand, it has to be self-hatred going on, because I don't understand how you can possibly look at your community. I remember riding through there with my grandparents when I was younger, and that was a very upscale community, and you wanted to live over there, and you really felt like this is where, blacks that were making it lived. That place looks horrible, and so how do you even think that's okay? Like, how does that even look right to you? Pawn shops or cash advance places, tons of fast food. How is that even visionary or right or acceptable?
That's Galen Alcaraz. I'm Ben Joravsky. We'll take a break and we'll be right back. Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
Ms. Preckwinkle, what song makes you want to get up and dance?
A change gonna come.
Ms. Lightfoot, what song makes you sing out loud in the car?
Just One Victory by Todd Rundgren.
What do you do to relax? Not this. I know either one of you. Go ahead.
I'm a sports nut, so I've got every sports act, Bleacher Report, ESPN. I pay close attention. My White Sox are queuing up, so I'm excited about that. And I'm looking forward to a new Bear season as well.
Ms. Preckwinkle, what do you do to relax?
I'm a history teacher by profession, and I love reading biography, so I do that. And as a history teacher, I love antique shows and antique fairs.
Oh, Toni Preckwinkle loves antiques. Well, there's something I need to tell Toni Preckwinkle if she's listening. Okay. Probably not at all. Today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you in part by Green Element Resale. It's a thrift shop located at 6241 North Broadway. And Toni Preckwinkle, it's amazing. Furniture, appliances, lamps, books, clothes, electronics, antiques. Yeah, it is a thrift shop, but it's the only thrift shop in Chicago that helps bring you the Ben Joravsky Show. So if you're ever on Broadway between Granville and Devon, tell them thank you and go check out Green Element Resale. I'm talking to you too, Tony. 6241 North Broadway, and find more information at greenelementresale.com. It's Green Element Resale. I guarantee when you go, you're going to save tons.
Driving you?
Oh my, of money. Now back to the Ben Joravsky Show.
Yeah, I forgot that little bit. That was from the debate where Lori Lightfoot was saying, I'm looking forward to that White Sox season. Yeah, how's it looking, Lori? They're not doing so well. I like the White Sox as much as the next person, but that's just a fact. They're not doing that well. And I'm sure she's jumped off that bandwagon and is now getting ready for the Bears season. Galen Alcaraz in the studio with me, community activist from the South Side, although she's originally a North Sider. In my mind, she'll always be a North Sider. And I don't care where she lives. She's just such a North Sider and so so many ways, Galen Alcaraz. Before I bring Galen back, D, what you got for me, boy?
All right, well, you said we're going to do this here. The 6 things to watch on night 1 tonight of CNN's Democratic presidential debate in Detroit. We did number 6, and number 6 was Steve Bullock. Can Steve Bullock make a name for himself? Remember, he was not in the last debate.
That's right.
And Ben, what was your answer on that with Steve Bullock?
He can make a name for himself by yelling, I guess. He's got about 2 minutes. It's
a lot of yelling, according to Ben. So we did number 6. So you know what that means. It's time for
number 5.
Number 5, Mayor Pete. Can Mayor Pete Buttigieg take the next step? Buttigieg's candidacy is at a crossroads. The South Bend mayor is printing campaign cash, but his embrace of big dollar donors to supplement his grassroots support makes it difficult, to measure precisely where he stands. Despite the strong fundraising numbers, he's mostly seen as polling flatten out. His campaign, though fundamentally strong so far out from Iowa caucuses, has yet to carve out a clear base of support. Amid that uncertainty, tonight's debate could represent a turning point. What say you, Ben?
Well, he's going to have to tie himself to Frederick Douglass, and let me explain this one. Pete Buttigieg decided he was going to run for president of the United States, using as a platform his position as mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and he does not have a very good relationship, to put it mildly, with the black people who live in South Bend, Indiana. And last I looked, Galen Alcaraz, black people play a pretty significant role in my beloved Democratic Party. You cannot possibly win the Democratic nomination unless you get some black people to vote for you, Galen Alcaraz. It's just a fact, all right? Last I looked, he was at approximately 0% among black people. 0, okay? Galen, if Galen announced she was running for president right now, she'd be above 0 among black voters, okay? Right now, Galen, I announced I'd be above 0. So all the kids I went to high school with would vote for me. So I don't know what he's going to do. You know, he came out with this. He had this plan. He named it for Frederick Douglass, the great activist and orator and thinker and writer from the 19th century. And so good luck with that one, Mayor Pete. So, you know, he's really good at fundraising. I'll give him that. So, you know.
All right, so number 5 was Mayor Pete. On to
number 4.
Now, according to CNN, number 4 is the man who won't be there, Joe Biden. Biden figures to have his hands full on night 2, but he will also be present, as conjured up by his rivals on Tuesday, especially when it comes to health care. It says here the Sanders campaign has directed the lion's share of its attacks at the former vice president, who has been openly and sometimes mockingly skeptical of the party's move left, and specifically the political prospects of Medicare for all.
Yeah, all right, what he's going to have to do tomorrow. We'll be talking about this tomorrow, because Grandpa Joe will be on the stage tomorrow against Kamala Harris. Hold on, I want a little more of that Kamala Kool-Aid.
Oh, he loves Kamala Harris. Drink that Kool-Aid, buddy.
I'm drinking that Kamala Kool-Aid, Galen.
All right.
Joe Biden's going to be dealing with Kamala tomorrow. We'll talk about that tomorrow.
All right, on to
number 3.
Number 3 here. So the 6 things to watch for in tonight's debate. We just mentioned number 4, Joe Biden. Number 3, the progressive platform on trial. Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, free college, student debt forgiveness, stricter financial regulation, new taxes on the wealthiest Americans, trade and U.S. policy in the Middle East. It will all come under intense scrutiny tonight.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'm for all those things. I'm basically a Bernie Sanders Democrat. I'm a lefty. But the reality is you're going to watch whoever wins, Galen, and you know it. You've been watching politics for a while. As soon as that nomination is gained, he or she will move to the center. And most of those programs will be quietly dropped or modified a little bit. You know, come on. That's politics, right? You got to move to the center. That's just sort of 101. So, you know, they'll defend it tonight. I think Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders will be battling it out on that one. But eventually, and well, I don't know if Bernie, I can't imagine Bernie moving to the center. I can't imagine that one in a million years. You know what I'm saying, Galen?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been believing this for a long time. So if someone is not going to move to the center, it'll be Bernie Sanders.
All right, we did number 3. Time now for
Number 2.
And you knew that was next. All right. Up next, Beto O'Rourke. O'Rourke rode into the campaign with a massive first quarter fundraising haul and the affection of Democrats around the country following his energetic and innovative, a bit unsuccessful Senate campaign. But after a few months on the national stage, the energy is running low and O'Rourke will need to turn it up and reinsert himself into the heat of the primary fight.
Yeah. What did Candace Castillo say on this very show? Should have run for senator, Beto. I agree with her.
All right, and finally, it is time for we've did number 6, 5, 4, number 3, and 2. So yeah, up next is
number 1.
Oh man, the 6 things to look forward to tonight's debate, and I think everybody knows what it is. Toe to toe or side by side? Asks CNN. Warren and Sanders share the stage.
Yeah, we've been talking about that all day, and this will be their opportunity to make their case to the left side of the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders led the way in 2016. Many of the positions that he took, which seemed so outrageous to many people in this country in 2016, are now part and parcel of the Democratic Party. And Elizabeth Warren supported him all the time, all these positions. So she's been right there on the front lines on almost every single important progressive issue. And now she's going to have to claim, her mantle as the leader of progressive Democrats. So, like I said to Galen, this will be interesting. Can they do this in a civil way where they acknowledge, the achievements and the accomplishments of the others, or will they just go toe to toe and start tearing each other apart? I hope they do it the former. You know what I mean? They're civil because they were allies on almost all these issues. But we shall see.
She got a plan for that.
Watch
She's
tonight.
got a plan for that. Okay.
She does. She'll have a plan for that.
Yeah.
She'll be ready. Check out tonight's debates on CNN, or find them online. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about it. Feel free to weigh in on our social media pages at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show, JORAV as in victory, SKY.
All right, very good job, D. All right, Galen. Now, something you said before we went to break, and we talked about this off air. You were talking about how bad the neighborhood looks, and I know where you're coming from when you're speaking from your heart when you say that. Donald John Trump, President of the United States, just tweeted it out about Baltimore. When you hear Donald Trump say what he says, and you hear, how you feel about it, what is the difference in the way you articulate it and the way Donald Trump does?
Well, number one, Donald Trump is a racist, so he's not saying it from a place of, concerned about people or actually what's happening in the neighborhoods. He's just doing stuff to get reactions, to tweet, to rile up his base. And so, and hatred riles up his base. And so that, his is just different. I mean, I don't really pay him and what he says and what he's tweeting a whole lot of attention, because that's what he wants. He wants attention. And every time we give him that, it feeds into his whole ego thing. And so he's doing it for a totally different reason. He's not doing it, coming from a place, a community activist, or coming from a place where he cares about a community and the people that live in that community.
I argue that we have to pay attention and respond to Donald Trump because I don't want to see what he says normalized and accepted as just routine sentiments.
But they are normalizing it. His base, they are normalizing it. It's like, we have come out, we have said stuff, we have been countering his stuff, and still people fake news, where did that come from? So that's all this stuff is normalized amongst his base.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying I don't want to normalize. I don't want future presidents to feel they could do the same thing. He's just not some guy in a corner. He's the president of the United States. He's tweeting it out. That's like official U.S. policy. It's so bizarre. I mean, it's just like, for instance, let's say he actually cared about what was happening in Baltimore. He's not Joe on the corner. He's the president of the United States. He could do something about it. Do you follow what I'm saying, Gail?
Right.
He controls the federal purse strings if he wanted to.
Right.
He could rebuild Baltimore. All the money that he's spending on the wall, he could spend it in Baltimore.
Right.
But instead, he just, what a hellhole. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I don't think we should tolerate it. And that's why I think people should speak up against it.
Well, people are going to continue to speak up against it. But there's always going to be, people that'll be like, he's nuts and he's got a mental health problem, and let's just hurry up and get through his term.
So what about that? Are you optimistic about getting through his term? Do you think that Donald Trump can be defeated in next year?
Oh, he most definitely can be defeated. But the Democrats have to really, bring their game, to the table. And, they just got to bring their game, which means...
Yeah, what does that mean? Yeah.
Which, they've got to court the black vote, but particularly the black women vote, because that's one of the key things that that pushes a lot of these elections over the edge in these cities is black women voters. And so that's the game that has to happen. You see how Hillary was doing it real tough, on black women. So that's what has to happen. And also, young people. So young people and black women are, I think, crucial to this whole outcome.
Mm-hmm. Do you still have the admiration that you had for the Barack Obama, Joe Biden team it seems like centuries ago, but it was only 3 years ago. So many people that come through the studio, Galen, are critical of what Obama did. They're critical of what Bill Clinton. Really hard to find anybody who supports Bill Clinton. I got a lot of issues with Bill Clinton.
Right.
What's your attitude when you look at these Democratic leaders? And I know, because I knew you back in the 90s. We would talk about Clinton. We would.
Right.
We watched Obama's rise. Do you still have a positive attitude about him?
No, I don't. And, for a lot of reasons. But I think that in terms of like that energy, when he first ran, all that energy and yes, we can, and everybody was coming together, that's the type of energy that I want again, and a lot of people want again. But I don't think that he operated at his best. And maybe his best was never what we thought it was. You know what I'm saying? And so maybe, Barack was always, this moderate and, however he was going to vote and not vote, but, pass things or whatever, that's how he was. I think my biggest thing, though, is how it played out with his church and the pastor that brought him to Christ, and how Michelle actually has something in her book that still criticizes Reverend Wright. So those things right there really, really stick out for me. On top of all the other stuff, like, it was drone killings when Barack was in office. It was all these things that's happening now. But that personal thing with Reverend Wright and the church, which for full disclosure, I'm a member of, really bothers me. And for Michelle to even have something in her latest book talking about that just really bothers me. So that makes me think of them in a whole different light now.
Obama had to distance himself, to put it mildly. It's maybe ancient history, a lot of people, but there are a lot of people in Chicago who have not forgotten. In 2008, Barack Obama distanced himself from Reverend Wright because the world discovered that Reverend Wright had made some quote-unquote controversial statements and speeches. I always kind of enjoyed his sermons. I wish Reverend Wright, my only criticism of Reverend Wright, was very local criticism. I wish he'd been more outspoken in terms of Chicago politics. He didn't really get involved in Chicago politics. Most ministers, I'd have to say, in the city of Chicago, many ministers, stay out of Chicago politics because they need the city's blessings for whatever development deals they have going on. So, but Barack Obama distanced himself. Some would say he threw Reverend Wright under the bus.
Exactly.
All right, Galen Alcaraz is my guest. Thank you so much for coming by, Galen. And I also want to thank Amisha Patel, was my guest a little earlier, Mexico Williams as well, and Danielle DeGrasse Alston, her book, We Are the Kids in Africa, Diary of an American Girl, excellent book. She was our guest at 1:30. Leah did an outstanding job. And, of course, the man, the myth, the legend.
And your daughter, Rachel, was great.
Rachel, what happened to Rachel? I think she went out for lunch with Danielle. Rachel did a great job as well. And, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, the doctor from Alton, Illinois, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. Do you know what they call him back in Alton, Illinois?
What?
They call him White Lightning. That's what they
No, they don't.
Yes, they do. Dr. D, give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you download your favorite podcasts. Downloaders, we live stream this program. Yes, it's true. Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time. Once again, at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites. Check us out on social media at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show. Watch the debate. Weigh in with your thoughts. We'll be talking about it all day tomorrow.